Australian Survivor. Survivor New Zealand.
Survivor.
21 South Africans. 12 ordinary Australians. 16 New Zealanders.
£1 million.
Hello everyone and welcome to RHAP's coverage of Survivor South Africa Immunity Island. I'm your host, Shannon Guss, here to talk about the third preview for the season. Such exciting times. We've got through half the cast. If you haven't listened to previews 1 and 2, I guess get to that first for no reason other than that's just the order that we're doing things in. Maybe we will build on some in-jokes that you don't yet know if you haven't listened to those first 2 parts. But then come back to this podcast where we're talking about the last 5 alphabetical men, the second half of the men. I know nothing about them. Mike has edited the interviews and I'm going to be hearing them in real time. So please welcome my co-host. Again, the blank to my blank because I don't know what we're doing, the great Mike Bloom.
Oh, good. So we're bringing it back for the men, which makes sense considering the part that I filled in the first time that you mentioned that, which is one of those in-jokes that if you haven't listened to the first part, you won't get.
You're so out. You got to listen. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. I usually come into podcasts super prepared. But with these ones, like, I revel in the unknowing. So I come in here, I have no notes. I've got nothing planned. I forgot that I didn't even plan a something to my something joke until right now. So I was unprepared even in doing it. So you understand that I have to do blank to my blank for the second time in a couple of weeks. I had no other option. I'm extremely unprepared.
Shannon, you have to live in the spontaneity sometimes. It's an incredible place to live between the lines, if not only because you have absolutely no idea where you're going. I'm not even sure how I'm going to finish this sentence at certain points when I'm podcasting, but it's also much like the game of Survivor, right? You can't go in necessarily with a plan. You have to prepare yourself for both the best and the worst. That being said, we are looking forward to listening to 5 more people tell us exactly what they're going to do in the game.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it's gonna play out exactly as they say, but I don't like the unpreparedness. I have to say blank to my blank 2 times, Mike. It's not good. I'm glad this is the last one, just for that sense of mind for myself. But I really enjoyed it last time, and I am excited for it. So it's not all negative.
Yeah, so in case you have wandered in here in part 3 for whatever reason, basically Shannon and I had the privilege of being able to send in written questions to be asked to the contestants in the preseason of Survivor South Africa Season 8, Immunity Island. They have answered those questions for us. The lovely production team has captured those answers on audio. We have then taken that audio, spliced in our own voices, asking the question, and we are playing back the audio to you right now. So I personally have edited these questions. Shannon has not. Over the course of the interview, we're going to listen to it. At any point in time, if any of us wants to stop down, we will say the word steers. That will pause the interview and we'll talk through what we just heard. But over the course of today's podcast, you're going to be hearing from Mike, Paul, Renier, Shaun, and Tyson.
Is Survivor Mike good? Can he live up to the name of Mike? I mean, we had Survivor Mike last season. He was great. And also, you are Mike. So it means a lot.
That's true.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, listen, the name Mike is very loaded within Survivor US canon as well. There is a Survivor winner Mike that exists out there in the universe. Let's see if we can make it a second one as well.
Yeah, I mean, and that's not even what I think about when I think Survivor Mike. Like, I was like, which Survivor winner for a second? I'm very unprepared. That's like the third Survivor Mike that I think of. Mike
so you're so unprepared, you have completely forgotten the season Survivor World apart. Which, listen, I don't necessarily blame you to a certain extent, but that's how unprepared you are. You've forgotten previous Survivor seasons as well.
I do think that is the one that I would forget. I think that is the one that I would push down if there was going to be any. I was like, Mike? For some reason, I was thinking a lot of like Mike from One World. I was like, he didn't win. Mike Holloway, yes.
You went to Michael Jefferson before you went to Mike Holloway?
I know, and I just saw him tweet earlier today.
Survivor Family Feud team, Shannon. I'm so sorry. If you're saying, give me the number 1 Mike on the board from Survivor, I do not think Michael Jefferson is anywhere near that board.
No, Michael Jefferson was third. It was Mike from Survivor South Africa, Island of Secrets, then you, then Michael Jefferson, then Mike Holloway. That's where my mind went. Okay, I don't have my notes. I am just flying blind here.
We're talking about a very different Mike to start things up because we're talking about Mike Laws. And yes, he is a lawyer. That's incredible. I love it. do you think was it a thing? I wonder. He doesn't answer this in the interview, but like, well, my last name is Laws. I have to find myself in this career path. The name is just too good.
I had a coworker who had a boyfriend, now husband, whose last name was Sparky, which will mean nothing to you, but in Australia, a Sparky is an electrician. That's what we call electricians, and he was an electrician. And I always thought, there you go. So I think, you know, if my name was Shannon Laws, I think I would have been pushed in that direction.
Could it be that he had a different last name, got into law, and sort of like in a Better Call Saul approach said, well, listen, nobody's going to go to Mike Johansson for law. If I change my last name to Mike Laws, they'll say, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. Law's literally in his family name. It
also just makes like marketing really easy. I could be Shannon Podcast.
Shannon Podcast?
Why did I say it like that? I am.
Shannon Podcast sounds like I don't know, like a Borat sentence, you know?
Yeah, it's not. I think it makes you too much like a Pokemon to have your name as what you do, you know?
Yeah. If your name could also be the lower third in your reality show, right? Like instead of it now saying Mike Lawyers, it could be Mike Laws, and you're like, yeah, I get where he works in now. It's an intriguing choice. So whether purposefully or done completely by coincidence, we're very happy to hear from Mike. Shannon, is there anything else you would like to get into? Or are you ready to jump into the unknown some more and hear from Mike?
I'm ready to jump in. I want to say that being Mike Laws, he was never going to become a criminal, because that would be too ironic.
Yeah, well, then maybe that's that thing, right? Because he couldn't be a criminal because people would always assume that he was an undercover cop. Because, like, look at your last name. It's Laws. We know who you're siding with, Mike.
Or people don't put that much stock into names, and we've just riffed on this for several minutes, and it's been too long.
Or he's actually a cat.
Okay.
Mike Claus.
Mike Claus.
He changed the syllables only slightly to throw people off the scent.
Oh my gosh, he's a cat made into a man. That's a great name for a cat. If anyone's getting a cat, name it Mike Claus. I can't even say anything else. You've ruined this guy, and we haven't even got to the interview, and we have a whole season of him.
I'm so sorry. Hopefully he doesn't mention himself by first and last name as much over the course of the season. Because, yeah, now I can't think of him just as... There's a picture of him. There's a picture of him that's in the header for this. Now all I'm imagining is an anthropomorphized cat.
That's exactly who he is to me now. I actually don't have the pictures in front of me because I'm incredibly unprepared, so... He is a cat to me now, which is a high compliment. I'm so glad we riffed on this for the full 5 minutes. I'm so glad we got to Mike Claus, because he will always be Mike Claus to me now.
All right, well, let's sink our claws into Mike Claus, shall we? Let's hear a little bit from Mike. So to start, tell us about yourself. Your name, your age, your occupation, and what you like doing.
Hey, everyone. This is Mike. I am 31 years old. I'm from Johannesburg, and I am a lawyer.
Why are you here on Survivor?
I'm here because I want to play the greatest game of human chess. And although I think I've got a good heart, I do like the more Machiavellian qualities that come with being a human. I like strategizing. I like, the politics of court, so to speak. And this is the ultimate game for that, for human strategy.
What's your history with Survivor?
It comes as like an M, right? So the first time I watched was season 1, the American one. I was 10. It came out in 1990, and I lost my man.
Did it come out in 1990?
Yeah, I mean, he was a decade off. Roughly.
Yeah, no, I know. He said it so confidently that I was like, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know what's going on today.
Let's actually take a second here, though, Shannon, because I think it should be mentioned here that, I don't know, from my perspective, and this is my ignorant American perspective, I think a surprising amount of these people first watched Survivor Borneo. I don't know why.
Global. It was a global phenomenon.
Plus, yeah, that's the thing. I guess 20 plus years on, we're just sort of like, yeah, we're used to Survivor fans maybe being late on the bandwagon, but it really does seem like nearly every person that we have interviewed so far said they watched Survivor Borneo, and maybe they dropped off. Most of them did, and it came back at a certain season, but yeah, I mean, it just really goes to show for those of you who did not watch along Survivor Borneo in the summer of 2000, it was such a phenomenon that even people at the time who would go on to be Survivor contestants but weren't into Survivor were watching the very first season.
Yeah, I mean, my parents were day one watchers in South Africa at the time. We hadn't moved yet, of Borneo. And I even remember, this is a memory I have that could be wrong, but I feel like during the Amazing Race that Rob and Amber on one of their seasons, they came to South Africa, and I remember that a lot of South Africans were like, oh my God, Rob and Amber, and like trying to help them. And I remember thinking, yeah, this is because South Africa loves Survivor, like in those early days. So this doesn't surprise me that a lot of people were watching it like very early on.
Yeah, I do believe, yes, they did go to South Africa. They spent time in South Africa and Botswana. Now that I think about it, I definitely remember them being there. And specifically that was the entire onus of the season, was that Rob and Amber basically got help around the world from all the biggest fans. Because this was only like a couple of years after, I think only a year after they had gotten engaged and were on Survivor All-Stars. So like it was peak Romber at that point, and everyone, including South Africans, were willing to help them at any point in the race.
We were into it. Yeah, this makes a lot of sense.
Well,
in 1990.
We're going to hear, yeah, exactly. We're going to hear about this from Mike as we go through the decades, though. A very unique moment in Survivor history is going to actually bring him back into the fold since 1990, that magical year that Survivor Borneo came to our screens.
All right.
Like, it was the best thing I've ever seen. And it was actually the first TV show. I mean, I was 10. So, you're really at that cusp, between like being a pure kid and preteen. And it was the first, like a property, the first entertainment thing in the world that I became like.
He knows he was 10. He wasn't 10 in 1990. This is so he knows. I was like, does he think he was like a small baby? Because he's 32. Let me do the quick math. 1990, he was like roughly-ish born.
No, he's my age. I was born in 1989. I'm 31.
So he knows he was 10. So he's okay. He just said the wrong thing, and we've just gone on about it because we're the worst. But he knows it was 2000.
We slip up from years from time to time, right? It took me even like some mental math, a brief pause to figure out that I was even 31 years old. That's what happens when you get on in your years, Shannon.
I was panicking trying to work out what year someone who's 32 would be born in. So, and I'm only 28, I think.
Yeah. You know what the problem is, Shannon? He was calculating his time in cat years, and he was trying to translate it back into human years and came up with 1990. So the math was a little off.
Yes, he's trying to just convince us all he's a human. We're on to you, Mike Laws. We are on to you,
Mike
cat.
Laws. Yeah, exactly. We didn't have to do a lot of deep digging there, but let's hear some more from the cat man.
Absolutely spellbound to the point where I dragged my poor mother to the mall to go and buy me a buff, but because there were like no buffs, I just got like a bandana, and I wore that bandana like I was obsessed with that. But I was 10 and I was busting a neckerchief. You know how bold you have to be, a 10-year-old with a neckerchief.
So I apologize that we have to pause through like the third question that is asked.
And pause is a loaded word as well with my claws.
Exactly. But I should mention that I know that Shannon doesn't have the picture in front, but you all do. If you see the picture of Mike, he is indeed wearing a neckerchief. I do wonder if this was the one that his mom bought him all the way back in the year 1990. I'm not sure, but that's fun. That shows how dedicated you are as a Survivor fan. I'm sure we all have had that experience, right, of like wearing buffs on the playground and having measured responses from your peers.
Oh my!
But unfortunately, there were no buffs available.
You said a lot. You just said a lot about your schooling experience. We all have the experience of being bullied for the buff we're wearing on the playground. Do we?
No, not bullied. Not bullied, judged. Maybe judge is a better word for it. One way or the other.
Have to unpack this on the podcast.
Exactly. This is more so therapy for me than it is preseason podcast. I think the true purpose of this podcast series has come out, but he is wearing what looks like a pink neckerchief, I believe, a bandana around his neck. And that did make me wonder after I heard this, if that is that neckerchief that he's hung onto for now like 30 years.
40 years in cat years.
Yeah, no, probably like 60 years at this point.
Easy neckerchief. And I wore that thing, like obsessively. And then, so there was that kind of like childhood, kind of period. So maybe the first 3 or 4 seasons I watched, maybe 5 seasons. Then I kind of went away to school. We didn't have really access to like the type of
It's okay that Survivor Thailand made you go away, Mike. That's so fair. That's really, really fair. I just want to say, I want to validate that. Maybe 5 seasons, and then for some reason I dropped off. What could that have been? Was it the monstrosity that is Survivor Thailand?
listen, 1995 was a different time. Okay, there was a lot of stuff that maybe flew differently than it did today. So, and also it's also, you know, going away to school. It happened to me a little bit as well. Like when you're missing watching Survivor with your homebodied family, like you might just get busy and might have to miss out on Wednesday/Thursday night. So I think it makes a lot of sense.
He was
but
12. What does it say? Also, earlier, when you said 30 years and I said 40 years, it should have been 20 years. Okay, we're all getting very confused with the math of this, and I think we should just stay away from numbers for the rest of the podcast.
I'm sticking with the 1990 metric, okay? That's my thing.
No more numbers.
No more numbers. Let's swear to that in the course of this podcast. We will not mention a number again over the course of this entire podcast.
Like the type of regular broadcasting. So I kind of just ended up taking this huge break from it. And then it was, I think it was for the American Game Changers season. And there was all of that reporting around one of the characters being outed as trans, Zeke. And it was like such a huge media fanfare moment. And I was really fascinated by it. And I just thought I'd watch that particular episode. And I was just blown away at how much the game had evolved. Like, it was a completely different game. And at that time, I was doing my training to become an advocate, which to non-South Africans is like it's a trial lawyer, really, what the English would call a barrister. And I was amazed at just like all of the strategizing and the game theory and the risk assessment. And it was kind of mirroring what I was learning about in terms of like legal strategy and litigation. And I just thought, like, this is it. Like, this is the best game. And so, like, from then have kind of obsessively been just chowing through Survivor again. Missed 1 or 2 seasons, but most of I've got through it.
Steers. Okay. Yeah. So we have to talk about this because I do not think, Shannon, I can think of a single person in the billions on Earth that would say watching the episode of Survivor Game Changers with Zeke and Varner was what got me back into the show. But I guess Michael wants the exception to prove the rule.
No, he's a cat, so maybe it's different. But we're going to go on about this a lot, guys. If it's already getting tired, strap yourselves in for a lot of the cat talk. Look, I now want to take back what I said that maybe Survivor Thailand is why he jumped off. I feel like he would love Survivor Thailand because it's dark and terrible. Look, I get what he's saying, and it's an interesting thing that he's like, I'm an advocate, and I can see here in his bio, he says his favorite player is Zeke. So maybe he's just like intrigued in that, and even like
he gets into that in his and a little bit more in his interview as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big moment. It was the kind of thing where you're like, is that show still on? It's now in the news, and if you can kind of find other positive things through that, I could see that happening. And obviously, he says as an advocate, he probably has like a personal connection to some of these things happening. He can try to find something constructive in that to try and move forward with it. There aren't a lot of episodes in Survivor that could make me stop watching the show, and that's probably one of them. So it's like the opposite. That episode just made me so sad. I feel like it was like everything that you would not watch the modern show for, it just being dark and terrible, and when the game goes too far, like I really dislike when people say you're a liar or whatever just for going on Survivor. It's just like duplicitous thing because it's a game, but that wasn't a game. And it was kind of right about all the negative things people say about Survivor, about how it makes you a terrible person and terrible things happen. So it was definitely the worst parts of the show, but good for him for finding something really positive in that and it making him a fan again.
Yeah, see, that's the thing, is that let's please not like obfuscate this and make this seem like, Mike really enjoyed what happened, and so he decided to start watching Survivor. No, I think it's because this was obviously a big spotlight on the show. And so Mike was like, hey, I was a kid. I bought the bandana in 1990. Let me go check out I mentioned a number. Let's see what's going on here. And so he watched the episode and I think was more so drawn in by almost everything else besides that incident, as weird as it was, of like, let me dip my head back in underwater, take a look at what sort of coral has been growing since. And obviously it's a really interesting looking corals from seasons 5 to season 34, and said, okay, the game has really evolved. Sort of went in line with the strategizing and head games he likes to play in his day-to-day. Let me get into that. I just think it's incredibly unique because, to your point, this is very much a point in the show that some I think would consider a low point for the series, if maybe the franchise in general, something that would very much make people want to say, I don't want to watch this anymore. I think Mike happened to get brought in by that flashy event, saw everything else going on around it, and said, I'm interested in that stuff. Let me continue. And that has to be one of the most unique stories I have heard of how someone got back into Survivor.
I just love it because we did a whole podcast on how to introduce your friends to Survivor. This like science, we debated, we had different strategies because it is an art form. But oh no, someone can get hooked on it with literally the worst episode in like one of the worst seasons ever. And everything we talked about was meaningless. Let's hear more.
One life experience you feel has prepared you most for the game?
I'm not sure if they're particular moments, but they're like maybe chapters or like or sequences that I think have set me up quite well. The first has been, and I mean, it sounds like so strange, but a couple of years ago I did this like 10-day silent meditation retreat where you just had to be absolutely silent, no reading, no writing, meditating 10 hours a day. And apart from learning how to meditate, it was like pretty good at realizing how miserable you can be, especially when isolated, like how deep that well goes, and being able to like find these guardrails in your brain and in the depths of your subconscious to grip onto. And I know that definitely for this isolation period we've been in, it's been hardcore, especially I'm an extrovert. Like I totally vibe with other people. So to be isolated was like totally getting in my head. And so even so far already, I was like, okay, cool, homie, hit the ground, let's meditate. And it's like kept me a little bit steady. So even though it's not a very glamorous answer, I guess that was a very short period. That's been like a really good skill. And then the other thing, I mean, it's funny because this came to me the other day. So obviously before going into the game, I've been like thinking about how much of a villain do I want to be? Because, you know, we're multifaceted people, we're yin and we're yang. I'm like, no, I've got a shadow side. I know I've got a light side. And I want to be both. Like, I don't want to be like a 2D villain. I want to definitely be a little bit of everything. And I've been thinking a lot about like, okay, I'm going to be lying. Am I going to be deceiving? Is it going to feel weird? How am I going to feel about watching it back at home with friends? In my line of work, we have to be really honest as advocates. We make like officers of the court. We're expected to be really honest. So I was thinking a lot about like honesty. And so this sounds like, I must like step carefully here because I don't want to like be ridiculous. But so I'm gay, and you know, one of the things I was thinking about was like, you know, the last time I really underwent an extensive period of lying was when I was like a teen, and I was like in the closet, and the social environment I was in was like very homophobic and very hostile. And I was thinking that like, oh, you know, like lying kind of gets a bad rap because sometimes lying, of course, it's lying under duress, you know, it's like, but, you know, lying in certain contexts can sometimes be critical for one's survival. And I was like, lol. I mean, this is literally a game where you might have to lie to survive. And so I guess what I don't want to fall into is to say that, like, I don't think queer people are dishonest in any way. I think for me, like, it made me comfortable to know that, like, there's a certain self-awareness, I guess, that comes when you're like as a teen in the closet and you're constantly watching how you're coming off and what are you doing and how are people perceiving you. That's a pretty good training in deception. And what was funny is, like, when I turned 19, I was like, I never want to lie about who I am ever again because it's so psychologically toxic. And now it's like, okay, cool. Like, now I maybe get to lie to win $1 million. Like, let's see how it goes. And like, I think I've had.
Sorry, didn't realize he had more. We'll listen to that. But what a brilliantly articulated answer. I've never heard anything like that before. It's obviously not something I can really empathize with, but it makes a lot of sense, I guess, about having to be just so constantly self-aware because you're not living your truth, like aware of yourself, which is so true of Survivor, where you can't necessarily be exactly who you want to be. You can't let things slip out. You have to be just like constantly aware of yourself. And I just think the fact that he articulated that made a lot of sense. I also think it makes a lot more sense with the whole Lana Zeke thing, where there was some really messy and ugly and untrue stuff around kind of LGBT identities and also deception, which was largely debunked and terrible, but I'm sure that he would be connected to that, again, like not in the affirmative way, but in like, hey, this is why this is wrong, but I'm interested in that, and now I'm like invested in the show.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're getting into why, with no offense whatsoever to the contestants that we've listened to so far, I think Mike might be the most intriguing interview that I've done out of all of these contestants because of the unique life experiences that he has, but also how he brings that into the Survivor headspace. Again, I don't think we've ever had a Survivor contestant give an interview and say, well, as someone who lived in the closet for quite some time, I unfortunately have experience with not necessarily deceiving others, because again, that's a bad label to affiliate to an entire community, but more so with like showing a part of myself that is more appeasing to others' proclivities. And it absolutely scans. I mean, it must have been emotionally tumultuous. So I'm very glad that, he told himself at 19 that he doesn't want to necessarily do that again. And I'm not here to say that he's going to come on and be a completely different person. It's just when you ask, what's one life experience you think would prepare you for the game? I do not expect that answer to be completely candid.
Yeah, this is what I love about Survivor, is that we can be hundreds of contestants into this and we can talk about it literally for, at this point, thousands of hours just between the two of us on a podcast, let alone in our lives, let alone how much the world is talking about a show like this. And someone can give you a point that is, cast in the show, who's going to be a character on the show, gives you a perspective that you just had never thought of. And that is just really unique and new. And nothing should be new in 2021 Survivor. The show has been on for 31 years. Like, really, we should be just rehashing old ideas. But again, it's not my demographic, so I guess I've thought about it less, but he's helped me see things in a new way. And I think that's really cool. And I'm really enjoying this interview.
One thing I want to bring up when his connection to the whole barrister thing is he said that he usually has to be very honest in his line of work, which does make sense. I know we invoked, of course, the great Shaun Coombs in our last podcast. I forget if you talked about this either with her or independently, Shannon. Was that like one of Shaun's biggest downfalls? Was that much like you talked about, like she had a hard time differentiating between the court of Survivor and the courtroom in real life, that she thought she had to be as upfront and honest as she is as a barrister?
Yeah, I think we did talk about that as well as that kind of misunderstanding the jury. I think there was a sense of that as well, but that's more of a final tribal council thing. And I think he's talking more through the game itself. Shaun, lied throughout the game at times, a lot of times. She was a swing vote a lot of the time. So I don't think Mike will have a problem with it. Like, I think he can separate his line of work from the game. He obviously seems like a very self-aware person, so he should be okay.
Yeah, well, you're going to hear a lot more of that as actually we get into his next couple of answers here.
Pretty good training in it. So, as someone who is normally very honest, and I'd say is like fundamentally honest, I'm like really looking forward to like see how deceptive I can be again. Like, which is a weird thing to say, but here we are.
What do you think people will perceive you as?
So, like, I know that reality TV is archetypal, right? It's like you're casting really specific archetypes, and I know some of the boxes I tick: city, white collar, yuppie, tick, intellectually smart, tick, maybe some kind of like, like intellectual superiority complex, maybe like going to be thrown off by dumb people. I mean, I know the notes that they've probably made about me behind the scenes, right? And I don't want to disappoint. But at the same time, so, like the classic archetype is like, I'm hoping to be like the charming rogue with a cheeky secret and a wink. I mean, those are always the characters that I love. I mean, if you're too heroic, I mean, it's white rice. It's super boring. But I also don't love a malicious villain. Like you get good villains and bad villains. I always say, like history is like littered with like bad villains. But there's sometimes like glorious villains or anti-heroes. I guess to the extent that I'm self-conscious enough about how I'm coming off, that's who I'd like to be. Is like an anti-hero, like if someone who starts off a villain, then has like a beautiful ascending moment and becomes the hero in the end. Because just like linear heroes, like super bop. But I'm not sure how much you can control it. You just have to do you and see how people feel it.
Steers. Okay, so yeah, you heard it here, Shannon. Not going to have a problem lying, but don't worry, he will become the anti-hero. Tony Soprano of Survivor South Africa, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, he was definitely right at the end that you can't control it. That is a tall order. It's very specific. Look, you go out there, you have a very specific idea of what you're going to be, that you're going to be the anti-hero. You get on your first interview. Before we've even started talking, we've called you a cat named Mike Claus. You can't control what people are going to say and how people are going to package you to the rest of the world. So, tough one. But he knows, I think he knows that is a tall order. I think he's saying, ideally, I'd be a really cool anti-hero and have this whole journey. And I think he would know that is a lot to expect.
Yeah, I love his quip that being a hero is white rice. It's too boring. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that because there was an entire tribe of them in one of Survivor's best seasons ever. But at least he's going in with the gumption, right? And this goes part and parcel with his comments in his last question about his ability and willingness to deceive in Survivor. That he's like, I'm not going to play the white knight here, the knight in shining armor. I also think it's interesting that he talks about the archetypes because, I mean, listen, if you say you're a charming rogue with a secret and a wink, that sounds a little cat-like to me, personally.
My claws is a cat. You heard it here first, and then repetitively after that. That's just what we do.
Which Survivor player are you most like?
There's certain players who I really love, even though I don't think that I'm like them. Like Sandra, so iconic. Sarah the cop, I think, is like super overlooked. Like, I think she's like so strong. I think the character that hooked me back into the show and that I just love on so many levels and who I think archetypally I vibrate similarly to is probably Zeke. I mean, over by the fact that I think like Zeke is so fascinating for like the kind of queer representation that he's been able to kind of hoist the flag up on, but just how he exists. He is like from the smart background. I think he worked in management consulting, also comes from kind of a white collary job. He's someone who maybe gets stuck in their head. I mean, I know that's one of my biggest weaknesses, and in that way I think I also feel a little bit like, I think it was Hannah from one of the seasons, who was like someone who gets very caught up in their thoughts. Like, I have anxiety, I get caught up in over planning. So I guess a hybrid between Zeke and Hannah is like how I'm probably like the most, but hopefully I can learn from their games and win.
Steers. So, yeah, I mean, this is the human representation of the entire Millennials tribe from season 33 is Mike Laws right here.
He's like, look, I have anxiety, I overplan things, and then we just like cut back to the beginning of the podcast where I'm like, look, I'm super anxious because I haven't planned anything for this.
Yeah. I mean, it's very sort of relatable, I think, from our specific perspectives, right? In his bio, Mike describes himself as like a classic city slicker. He says he's a corporate law geek with anxiety issues, strong opinions, and a big heart. It's very much, I know he invoked Hannah and Zeke. I get very much like Steven Fishback vibes from that specific bio line as well.
Yeah, I'm a podcaster geek with anxiety issues, strong opinions, and a big heart. So I totally do understand that. I'm also a cat. So.
Oh my God! Finally, the truth comes out.
Are we just teasing every answer at this point? Are we just like we're just going like before we would kind of wait to the end of the interview and give some overall thoughts? Now just every single answer. I
was waiting to the end of his interview. Yeah. Plus, he has interesting answers. So I think I don't think anyone has I don't think Zeke or Hannah has really shown up much on which Survivor player are you like in really any iteration. So I wanted to give it some shout out for some season 33 players.
If an answer doesn't get steers for the rest of the podcast, I will be surprised.
What do you desire in an alliance partner?
I have thought about this so much. Okay. Obviously, trustworthiness is like super big. But the other thing, and this is not going to sound that glamorous, is I think you want someone who's kind of like equal skill to you. If you are bringing along a goat, I think people read it as that. I think if you're bringing along a meat shield, people are reading it as that. If there's too much of a value differential between you and other players, then they're going to do the maths on that and they're going to work out that something's not so bueno. I think it's when you find someone who's actually on your level of value, I mean, and how you assess that value, I don't know, but you just get like a vibe for it. Those are the ones where it's like, I think the game theory works out best. Otherwise, if you're too much of a goat or too much of a meat shield, the incentive to get rid of you is too high.
What is the ethical or moral?
You're just trying to prove a point.
You just want to keep the shit going.
No, you were just trying to prove a point by not steersing that answer.
I thought it was a good answer.
You were going to steers it before I pointed it out. I know you were.
Well, go ahead. What did you want to say about his answer?
No, I just wanted to call you out.
I wasn't going to.
You were. I wouldn't be immediately wrong. That would be embarrassing. Yeah. Keep going.
Line for you in the game of Survivor?
Again, I mean, given the amount of time, I've thought so much about this question. Because, people often, especially after like the cluster truck, which was season 39 in the States and all of that, people say like, is Survivor separate to real life or is it part of real life? And, I think what people forget is that like Survivor is effectively like boxing. It's a game where certain rules are lifted and other rules still apply. So, like in boxing, if you punch someone, it's absolutely encouraged, But if you go out into the street and do it, you're a psychopath. Likewise in Survivor, if you lie to someone, if you deceive wildly, throughout the game, it's encouraged, it's celebrated. If you did that in real life, you'd be a psychopath, right? I think just because deception is allowed doesn't mean that all the rules go out the game or go out the window. And I mean, again, this is not me trying to get too much of like a hero edit, but like kindness is important. Like I think that you can be villainous. I think you can be deceptive without being unkind. And I think that there's some like iconic moments in Survivor where people were fundamentally unkind. And I think Survivor gives you permission to be deceptive. I don't think it gives you permission to be malicious or unkind. I mean, you can be and you can get away with it. I mean, no one's going to sue you, probably. But that for me is kind of the moral line. It's like it's kindness, not being unkind. Yeah.
Steers. So first, I'm very happy that the lawyer said you probably won't get sued if you're being unkind to someone on Survivor. Really nice guarantee. But that quote, you can be deceptive without being unkind. I mean, that is sort of jury management in a nutshell, is it not?
Yeah, and I do think it becomes a line because then we get into what is kindness. Like, is betraying someone and then screwing them out of R1 million fundamentally unkind? I think most Survivor fans would argue no. But then there are ways that you can take it where it does become very personal. I mean, it's all a very fine line on Survivor. I just know with Mike, what I'm really enjoying is how much of a deep thinker he is. Not the first deep thinker on this cast. We've gotten some great answers, but just the fact that he starts every answer with, I've thought about this a lot. I'm like, Mike, I also think about stuff too much. So feel you on that. Thank you for offering these perspectives, and then we can think endlessly about where is that line between kindness and betrayal and deception and all these things that work together on Survivor, but that you can maybe untangle.
Yeah, and I think it's also good that he walks in with this mindset as well. We have certainly heard some people, and we will hear from some people, right, that are just like, it's just a game, I'll do whatever it takes. And not to say that I don't think anyone is necessarily going to commit atrocities that have been committed to other people in the past. But I think where a lot of people's games fall into pitfalls is, like you said, cutting throats, but not doing the favor of treating the personal bonds that come with that throat slitting as well. And I think that Mike is at least bringing that into mind, where again, he's giving himself a lot of license, I think, to have fun and to be deceptive. He gives that example, right? That boxing metaphor of, hey, it's okay to punch you in the face in this game. Maybe we can do some things in this game that aren't necessarily allowed in your day-to-day life. But I think he's also maybe giving himself his own set of boundaries of, if I ever feel like I am doing this while being unkind to someone, not only is that bad for me as a person, but bad for me as the player.
I do think it is difficult because I think the game might lead you to be more unkind than you would want to be because, again, these things aren't entirely separate. But I think if you kind of have that in the back of your mind the whole time, to go in with this a general sense of trying to be cognizant of other people's feelings as you do betray, it should put you in good stead.
Would you rather be voted out pre-merge or get 0 votes at the final tribal council?
I mean, I'd rather receive 0 votes at the final tribal council. I mean, what kind of a question is that?
It's a trick question, Mike. It was a trick question. No, the answer is that you are the winner.
Anesu figured it out, and you were the second one to do so. No, I like this. Mike's going to go on to be like, who the hell would answer go out pre-merge? And it's like, well, Michael, let me refer to you to several of your castmates who did indeed say they would rather get voted out pre-merge than make it to the end and be a goat.
Many people would. That's why it's a hard question. I love that the contestants are struggling with it. We got you.
We got you.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't even explain the reason why in my head. Maybe it's just because you get more time to play and you get more time in the sun. I mean, you're going to go back to your boring 9 to 5, Egyptian cotton sheets anyway. I mean, like, life is so short. I mean, you might as well milk the survivor udder for as much as you can, while it's going.
What will be the biggest component of your game? Physical, strategy, or social?
Okay, this is something that I need to debate with people. What is the difference between social and strategic? They're the same thing in my head. Unless it's like you kind of partitioning out this little piece of meat where the social, where you're just kind of getting to know someone in jail, so you might then later have like a coffee with them after the game. No, like for me, the social is strategic. So for me, it's a social strategic is the one side versus like a physical game. I mean, I ain't that physical. I mean, and I'm okay with that. Like, I think I'm trying to be just physical enough to stay in the middle so that I don't seem too weak. Mm-hmm. But like, I'm very happy with being physically mediocre. I mean, I got lower back pain. I work at a desk 9 to 5. Like, I'm not here for physicality, but social strategic. I think I'm going to try to blow the door off the hinges.
Steers. Yeah, add lower back pain to the list of similarities that Mike and I have. I think that you can separate strategic more from social. Like, I would agree with him that the whole social game is strategic. Like, any relationship you have is social capital, it's strategic. But I do think, like Russell Hanson Samoa, strategic without being social. Like, there's enough advantages now, there's enough plans you can make, there's the numbers part of it that we don't talk about on this podcast because no more numbers on the podcast, that isn't necessarily social. So I would agree that social game is inherently strategic, but you could be strategic without the other part of it.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with what he's saying, that people are like, oh, well, they're not strategic, but they're playing a good social game. People aren't there necessarily to go there and just like make people cell phone contacts and then leave and not necessarily care where they go in the game. They want to win. And many times, part of the reason why they go far and win is because they are brokering social relationships. Many times the social leads to strategic. We have seen many relationships of people who work together, but then due to personality differences separate. Or someone like a Danny Boatwright makes social connections first, and those turn into strategic connections. So I agree. I think especially in like the 30s, the past 5 years of Survivor, there have been elements that have been specifically strategic oriented to maybe separate out more parts of the game than anything pre-season 30. I think so much of the game is involved in the social that I think it does sort of get the connotation when we talk about social as like, oh, you're braiding someone's hair and talking about their kids, as opposed to strategic where you're making the big moves. No, many times those things are often intertwined because you're not going to make the big moves unless you can rely on that person whose hair you've been braiding.
Yeah, and I think even if it's like not intentionally strategic in the social game, it is inherently strategic. So, look, he is largely right. But we asked a question, and as the question askers, we are right.
All right, let's move on. Favorite advantage in Survivor history?
Oh, man. I mean, my head darts between a good old-fashioned, like, hidden immunity idol. Like, it's a classic. I mean, it's still amazing to me how, like, such a chill, basic mechanic is so wild. Like, how it completely throws the mechanics of the game, how people use it, how people play with it. I mean, everything that springs out of it, like fake hidden immunity idols, blow my mind. When people successfully deploy a fake hidden immunity idol that like makes the smile peel off the side of my face, it's so intense. I think an interesting one is the steal a vote. That for me, like, you can't. It's probably actually the fake hidden immunity idol made by a player. It's probably, and when it's deployed correctly, is like my favorite.
What celebrity or fictional character would you want to come out for a loved one's visit?
What I would like is like the I'm thinking of like one of those food mascots that's made of that food, and then they come up for the loved one's visit, and then they give their foodie body to me, and I eat them on camera as like some kind of, something like the mascot for like an ice cream company, like a big soft serve mascot like stumbles onto the beach and he's like, Mike, and I'm like, you, and then I'm like hugging, and then I'm just like slurping this like ice cream mascot into.
Yeah, so Mike he's unique in so many ways. I believe he's the only person who would want to eat his loved one on the island.
You're telling me this man isn't a cat. If I were to ask my cat right now, Kitty, you're going to be on Survivor. Who would you like to be a loved one? Me or my mom or dad or brother? She'd be like, I want, Tuna Man, and I will eat Tuna Man. Or maybe you made out of tuna, and then I will eat you. Like, you're telling me this man isn't a cat. We're on to you, my claws.
I just have this image now of this giant glob of a man made out of tuna, stinky tuna, just walking out onto the island like, Tuna Man, come on out.
No, it would just be me covered in tuna, like, my cat, I love you so much. And she'd be like eating all the tuna, and I'd be dead.
I mean, this shows, listen, like Sierra Easton walked so that Mike Laws can run. She voted out her mom. He might eat her.
It's awful. I mean, the first, cannibalism answer, I guess, they're not really human, but neither is Mike. He's a cat, so I don't know. But this there is some humanity involved, though, right? Like if it has life to it, like if you bring out the Pillsbury Doughboy and you eat him, he's gonna feel pain. There's a soul in there, I'd like to believe. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of two references. I'm thinking about Homer eating his own donut head, and then on Community, what was the food that they said where Troy would just eat himself and it wouldn't even be a question if he was made out of pizza?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think something like that.
Yeah, so, look, food people, it's not the first time that we've even got into this on this podcast. If you didn't listen to the first two parts, again, go back. But Mike thought Bear Grylls was bagels, so we're going to have to, I don't know, for the brand scale that we're doing, there's going to be a lot of food people.
Yeah, we're going to have Bear Grylls, bagels, and Bagel Bear Grylls, which is going to be Mike's loved one.
Great answer. Really morbid, really unsettling, but fun.
My mouth, so it's really like a food challenge dressed up as a loved one's visit.
If you could have any superpower, what would it be and why?
I mean, reading minds, very vibey. But I think reading minds with the add-on of strong persuasion, really being able to move people is the one. Or time travel. I mean, the first one, because it would really help me out in this game. But I think generally in life, the ability to read people perfectly and persuade people. I mean, we're a social species, right? Pretty much the sky's the limit after that. I mean, time travel is just a vibe. It's Club Med every day throughout history for you. I mean, it's bam, it's the Romans. Now it's having a little sojourn through I don't know, some other interesting historical moment. So yeah, I think one of those two.
So it's about 24 hours before the game starts at the time you're recording this. What's going through your head as you're about to enter the game?
That I should probably have shaved before I gave away my shaver. Yeah, I'm being a little hairy. No, what is going through my mind? I'm trying to do the clutch control between that part of my mind, which is freaking out, which is nervous and I really don't want to go home first. I really, want to play a great game, a game I'm proud of, but not overplay. All the thoughts, all the frenetic rumblings, and then just the bit that's cool and calm and dude, you got this. You've already won it. It's chilled, win or lose, it's yours. Just have fun. So I'm trying to find the clutch control between those two at the moment.
And there you have it, Mike Laws, the cannibal cat lawyer himself.
Cannibal cat lawyer. For a man who really had a sense of how he wanted to be perceived, we have just absolutely butchered that. Did he not get the question about what food he would step down for because he said he'd eat his loved one? Yeah, I mean,
they pretty much skipped over the question because I think you know what the answer is. It's what would you step down for? Well, if someone was made of ice cream and they stepped out onto it, I'd absolutely walk down, hug them, and then take a big bite out of their shoulder. I think you don't want to go into that territory twice.
Yeah, what would you step down for? Look, I would eat Nico. So for me, I'd step down for anything. My bar is low.
Yeah, boy's a snack, so I think regardless, you're going to step down for him.
Mike is fun. He's fun as a human and a cat. His answers are really great. He is a huge overthinker. Again, not the first overthinker on this season. I think that he's going to have a little bit of trouble quieting the noise. I mean, if he has this many thoughts about it and he hasn't even stepped foot on the beach, he's not going to be getting a lot of sleep. I hope it goes well for him and that he doesn't kind of I feel like when you do overthink it that much, there is always the risk that you overthink it way too much and then blow yourself out of the game. I hope he gets time and kind of comes into his own with some calmness. But he did learn to meditate. I mean, I can't believe someone like that could go on a 10-day meditation retreat. Again, because we're so similar in all of the like ball of anxiety, cat people things that we are. Not talking for 10 days, it sounds like torture, clearly, for me. So the fact that he could do that shows some layers to his personality and maybe some restraint that might serve him well in the game.
I'm getting big John Cochran vibes from Mike, Shannon, between, him describing himself as the big ball of anxiety, between like the super duper level of Survivor fandom. Cochran has that infamous yearbook photo with like his buff around a teddy bear or something. He has very good quips as well, very dry sense of humor. So, I mean, we saw what happened to Cochran, right? Yes, he had kind of a disastrous move that he made in Survivor South Pacific, but he did make the merge, he did make the jury, and his second time out, he did win. So I think that Mike sort of shares that, again, that self-introspection, that level of understanding yourself that we've talked about time and time again is so key to being on Survivor. I'll be very intrigued to see how he meshes with the personalities in this cast. Because he's yet another person who in his profile said, like, one of my weaknesses is that at times I can be perceived as being arrogant. And that is far from the first nor the last time we have heard someone make that assessment of themselves. I do wonder, is the overthinking possibly going to sort of butt up against some of the way these other people are trying to play and possibly get him booted? I'm not sure, because on the other side of that is he has such a great assessment of himself and the game at large, considering all these things that he's thought through, including our own questions, that he goes out there, kills the social/strategic game, and is able to, much like John Cochran, broker those into a very comfortable position, make it to the end, and make a killing.
I've never heard such a positive portrayal of Cochran's first game in South Pacific. I long for your optimism. It's like, yeah, you made the merge in the jury. That's pretty much what happened.
I'm invoking Abby Maria, right? At least you made the jury.
Yeah, that's not how I think about his first game, but I guess in its simplest terms, I think Mike will be helped by the fact that all of these possible pitfalls are shared by other people in the cast. We have a lot of smart people. He's not the first lawyer in the cast, as an example. He's definitely not the first overthinker, as we've talked about. There's a lot of super fans. There's a lot of people putting a lot into this. If they could find each other, we could have like an anxious alliance. I would love that. Just like all the anxious people come together.
Yeah, I mean, people were saying, what do you desire in an alliance partner? Some were saying, I want someone who has the same line of thinking. Let's just get the bundle of nerves that is some of these players all together to just freak out all at once, bounce out all these ideas, most of them wrong to each other. Let's see how successful they turn out to be.
Look, I think a part of that was millennials versus Gen X, but I do think that there's enough people on this cast that we could come back and see that. And again, maybe that's why we're relating to so many of them. But another great cast member. This cast is just really delivering so far.
Well, let's deliver another one for you here, Shannon. We are going to talk about Paul. Paul is an aftercare teacher. Let's get into everything about Paul. So to start, tell us about yourself. Your name, your age, your occupation, and what you like doing.
Okay, I'm Paul Cupido. I am 28 years old. No, I paused there. I actually work as an aftercare manager in Johannesburg. And I would consider myself to be a very vibrant and enthusiastic person, a very hopeful and positive outlook on life. I do like a little bit of a challenge on a daily basis. So I actually indulge in quite a few sports during the week. I play hockey, play some touch rugby, a little bit of soccer here and there. Whatever I can do to get my hands dirty, and keep fit.
Wire steers. So just on that note of staying fit, because he mentions like all these random intramural sports he plays, I want to invoke something from his bio where he said the first thing he packed when he heard he was on one of the season's castaways was his sarong. And then he spent some time reading books on manipulation and, quote, trained every day like a triathlete. So I think we're looking at like a workhorse when it comes to the challenges, which is weird because, again, this is not like personal trainer, weightlifter, does this for a living. This is the guy that apparently does this in his free time. But if he's training like a triathlete each and every day, he's going to be built.
What did the sarong have to do with anything? There was some very disparate preparation techniques.
I don't know. Well, I don't know. Maybe he's, again, invoking a little bit of David, right? David got voted out with the sarong. Maybe he feels like, oh, David's super athletic and David wore a sarong. So I'm going to sort of pull what is it? Not Rachel McAdams' character in Mean Girls and Regina George. I'm just going to, one time he wore a sarong, and so I wore a sarong to Survivor.
That must be it. We got it. We're not overthinking this at all.
We figured it out, Paul. We've got you pegged. You here on Survivor?
I'm here on Survivor for a few reasons. One, because we watched the last season and my friend said that I would never get on the show, and here I am on the show. Other reason is that I like a bit of a chat.
Drop that, friend. Mean, unnecessary thing to say.
That being said, I don't know if spite is a good reason to go into Survivor.
That's the only reason to go on Survivor. I love that. It's so competitive. It's a great reason. Someone tells you can't, you do it. You don't even want to be there, but now they're wrong. It's great to prove people wrong.
All right, Paul, you won Survivor and $1,000,000. What have you got to say? Screw you, Kieran. You said I couldn't do it, and I did. This is a big middle finger to you.
Yeah, I love that. But that friend is a friend. With friends like that, who needs enemies? I don't know.
Yes, very true.
Challenge, and I think I'm also just addicted to adventure and something new, and Survivor looks like something that could give me that.
What's your history with Survivor?
I think I've watched maybe recently I watched the last season, and I think as a kid I watched maybe 2 or 3 seasons, but that would be a long break of easily 10 years between the first one and the most recent one.
Yes. It was more like 30 years, Paul. And also, yeah, exactly. I don't think that David is his inspiration. Australian Survivor player David, for the reason he brought a sarong. And also, I looked it up, and the food type that Troy would eat himself as was candy corn. I know that we're now on to the next interview, but sometimes when you're yelling at your podcast and they can't hear you and it annoys you, I have heard you, car yellers, candy corn. All right.
Thank you, Yegu, satiating the car yellers. I mean, let's also point out here that we just came across, we've talked about several super duper fans. I wouldn't say that Paul is necessarily a recruit because, again, he applied partially for spite. But he has markedly less of a fandom. He said he watched last season, and that's basically it when it comes to recollection. And not to say that decludes him from any well-doing in the game whatsoever. Look no further than Earl Cole knew next to nothing about Survivor, ends up playing a pretty damn dominant game, arguably one of the most underrated winning games of all time. So this is not to say we hate Paul. Paul doesn't watch a lot of Survivor. Paul's not going to do well, but I just think it's interesting to point out his disparity in fandom compared to some of the other people we've spoken about.
Yeah, and that's refreshing, though, because there is so much fandom in the cast, which is great. LaRue would cast like that. But give me a little bit of difference. Give me something that's a little bit different from what has become the norm of the season, which is just these super duper fan, overthinker, anxious people, anxious alliance for life.
No, totally agree. I think much like you bring in different personalities to see how they're going to interact and work around or with each other, you do that same thing with levels of fandom as well. I think it presents either obstacles or new opportunities as well for people to work with. So it's just another thing to navigate in the very treacherous obstacle course that is Survivor. One life experience you feel has prepared you most for the game?
I would definitely say possibly traveling around the world for the last 6 years and just going at it by myself and making plans and being stuck in countries without any money and trying to actually get myself out of those situations. And building relationships with people from other countries who don't even speak English.
What do you think people will perceive you as?
I feel with my personality, I'm someone who's very comfortable with themselves, who's a bit of a goofy clown, just happy-go-lucky kind of guy that just does his own thing and doesn't really think twice about doing it. So I think I could be perceived as someone who comes across as quite arrogant. But then again, on the flip side, if you spend 2 or 3 minutes with me, you'll actually see that I'm just a silly clown that likes to have fun and just, enjoy the finer things or the simpler things in life.
What do you desire in an alliance partner?
I think I look for in an alliance partner someone who will definitely not let doubt get the better of them, and someone who's also willing to actually communicate their doubts. Because I think if we make an alliance from day one, then it's trusting that throughout all the odds of where there might be doubt, whatever, that, we're still sticking to the game plan and that we follow a game plan. So I would definitely say someone who sticks to a game plan, and if the game plan somehow changes, then we communicate that game plan.
What steers? So something I want to add actually from his bio, almost like an addendum to his answer, because he talked about a very similar answer in his own bio. He said that he would want, quote, someone with a great social game, but also a hot head, saying that his outspokenness and confidence will likely irritate his fellow castaways. So I guess to add on, after the fact, I don't know when he wrote this interview, but Paul was essentially looking for someone who he could not only trust, but also someone who might possibly make themselves a bigger target over him.
I think he's saying he's someone with a great social game, but also a hot head.
Interesting. Yeah. I guess that's true. He says viewers will recognize him as a strong team player. Yeah, I guess, you know what? I did misread that. You're absolutely right. He described himself as someone with a great social game, but also a hot head.
Who would want someone with a hot head? Why?
I don't know. Again, that could be something that will always make them the bigger target above you. So I think there is some viability there.
But I do think with Paul, I think what we're seeing, and again, in a refreshing way, is I don't know if he's thinking to that extra layer of, like, again, we've had contestants who overthink things, saying, well, I want someone I can trust, but also someone I can beat, and someone who might take the attention off me. Like, there's so many layers to that. But I often think in Survivor, your first gut instinct can be correct. And I think we're seeing that with Paul. Like, I don't think he's thinking about this, a tenth of how much Mike is, but at the same token, I think Mike might overthink himself out of the game. So I think that there is some, again, it's refreshing because it's so different, but I think it can be right. Like, an example I think of is play the game Codenames, right? It's a simple game. Basically, there's one codemaster giving out words, and you have to see which kind of words match with that on the board. And I have some very smart friends who are overthinkers, who aren't great at the game because they'll get it first, and then they'll think, but could it be this other 5 options? And it's not. It was the first thing you thought about. Sometimes your first instinct is correct, and you're the codemaster, and you're like, no, it was the first one. And I think just being able to go into it with that more simplistic way of viewing it, but simplistic and right way, can be really helpful.
That being said, he does talk in his bio about how one of his weaknesses is his propensity to overthink things and bout of irrationality.
Okay, well, there you go. But then again, like, if you've seen one season within the last several decade of the show, I think there's a limit to how much you can overthink it. Like, you might overthink other things in life, but, like, I think just the amount of content we consume in Survivor really feeds into the overthinking, where you might be someone who overthinks, but it gets to, like, the end of the line where you only saw that one season, so you're kind of just within that sense of content about it, and maybe being someone who naturally overthinks, but just with that more limited content base is a perfect solution.
You're gonna watch one season, and you're not necessarily gonna be up at night thinking about the chance of an idle nullifier showing up in the game, right? Whereas other people have seen so many seasons and can dream up the twists and turns that will be thrown your way. You get to sleep easy, almost in, like, ignorant bliss, knowing that there's a handful of things that could come your way, but not necessarily the large scope of what you might have to handle. And
they probably won't come your way, so, like, you get that sleep.
Is the ethical or moral line for you in the game of Survivor?
I think on the ethical part, because for me, I like to personally connect with people on a genuine level. But now ethically, like that's changed for me, because now I'm actually doing it for my own personal benefit. And usually when I make relationships with people, I don't do it for the benefit of myself. I do it for the benefit of actually getting to know someone on a genuine level. So I think that's going to be the tricky part there, yeah.
Would you rather be voted out pre-merge or get 0 votes at the final tribal council?
I'd rather get voted out. No, actually, I'd rather get 0 votes at the final tribal council. I think because at least, I can say that I went the distance. Yeah, I'd rather go the distance than be voted out.
What will be the biggest component of your game? Physical, strategy, or social?
I would say definitely a social game. I would say, I think a social game, social game, because I'm a very interpersonal person, and I find it very easy to get along with people, and I can level people very, very well. However, then there is an element of the physical aspect. Physical aspect does work in my favor. However, I'm gonna try and play to what doesn't work in my favor, and let the other aspects that come naturally do their thing.
What's your favorite advantage in Survivor history?
I would definitely say possibly like the ability to find immunity idols in that regard. I think, as the game goes on, it becomes more tricky. How do you go and find an immunity idol without anyone looking? So I definitely got to come up with some sort of strategy to go looking for an idol without anyone suspecting that. So, yeah, I do have a few tricks up my sleeve for this one.
What celebrity or fictional character would you want to come out for a loved one's visit?
Oh, then I'd probably say Bear Grylls. Because that guy...
Stairs.
Bagels.
Bagels is coming out again. Bear Grylls and his twin brother, Bagel Grylls.
Bagel, yeah. Look, it makes sense. I actually think for Nicole and Paul to give the same answer doesn't surprise me as much because they are the two where I feel like the simplest answer is correct, and I feel like a lot of the time the two of them have had that. Like, you're overthinking it by having ice cream man that you're going to eat. You could just have Bear Grylls. He'll find you food, and you won't even have to eat a, person-like thing made out of food, but two-person-like to eat. Let's be honest, they're running out there. It's too close to cannibalism. Other people have drawn a line at the fact that they won't eat anything that resembles a person. So, I do think the fact that Paul and Nicole are the two that just said that, it's like, you guys are just right. You know what? You won the question. Bear Grylls is the answer. He'll be very helpful.
Is Bear Grylls still sort of like a household name nowadays, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Why not?
I feel like his heyday was really in like the early 2010s, but I guess if you're talking about who would you want to live in the wilderness with, I do suppose he still is sort of top of mind.
I would say so. I mean, not Bagels, but Bear Grylls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, nobody has displaced him, right, as like the go-to survival guy.
I mean, Aussie? Nah, I'm too much in the survival world.
Aussie is not Aussie Luth. OnlyFans resident has not displaced Bear Grylls as your go-to celebrity survival figure.
You were the one who asked if he was still relevant. I said yes. You asked for other names. I already have Aussie. I'm sorry.
I'm surprised you didn't say Michael Jefferson.
I am not on point today.
Well, Michael Jefferson has he has some survival experience. He was on Naked and Afraid once upon a time.
Yeah, there you go. I would want Michael Jefferson naked to come out so I could eat him. No.
No. So, clip that. put it on social.
Sorry.
He obviously knows the elements psychologically. He knows what is going through people's minds at certain times on certain days, being out there, and just learn how to play on people's emotional strengths.
What food would you sit out an immunity challenge for?
There's no food that would make me quit an immunity challenge. Purely because I'm strong enough to know that I'll, at the end of the day, if I just give in to one desire, then everything that I've worked up to build till that point, I've just done it for nothing. So I wouldn't give up anything just for food.
If you could have it.
I'm just laughing at the fact, like, I love Survivor cards. You get people together that are just so different. We've had 2 interviews today, and one person's like, I would never give in to any desire for food, and the other person is like, I wish my loved one were food, I would eat that human. Like, it's great.
And we know that inevitably, if and when this challenge comes up, and Nico's bringing out, the biltong and the cereal and everything under the sun, you're going to have people like Paul is like, no, I will stay. Bear Grylls taught me wisely to not step down for any food, and here I am, here to wait out the day and win that necklace.
Also, just tell us what food you like, but we know. It goes without saying at this point.
Any superpower, what would it be and why?
To be invisible. Because you can be in the room but not in the room, and you can pretty much go and you can come and go as you please.
So it's about 24 hours before the game starts at the time you're recording this. What's going through your head as you're about to enter the game?
Whew. Well, I think when I got the note, I think I paced up and down my room about a few hundred meters. And I think I'm also excited. I'm trying to figure out what my main strategy is. I've definitely run through a number of strategies in my head of how am I going to play, what am I going to do. And I think, yeah, I don't know, there's so much to think about, but I think at the end of the day, it's just to go out and make sure that I play the game and not make any decisions that will give me second thoughts later. And just balls to the wall.
Is there anything else you want to mention about yourself before you begin the adventure of a lifetime?
Funny enough, one of the reasons I kind of put the dreads in, because I thought, okay, well, shucks, man, if we can't get fire started, then I know hair is one of the most flammable things. So I'm hoping to probably get a fire started with my dreadlocks. And let's hope it goes well. It's not going to be fun pulling it out, but we'll probably reap the rewards of warmth once we can get it going.
And there's Paul, the man who might light his hair on fire in Survivor.
Yeah, that is commitment. That is extreme commitment. I wouldn't be doing that.
I don't think we've ever seen that before, at least not intentionally. Someone like chopping off their hair and putting it in the fire as kindling.
I mean, I think we know that the way to get Paul to do that would just be, he's willingly doing it, but even if not, you'd say, you'd never do that. And he'd be like, I'll show you. Dreadlocks come out.
Oh, you would not be the guy doing, oh, yeah, well, screw you. I'm going to chop all my hair up to light that fire.
Yeah, the spite application is great. I love that.
A tiebreaker at the final four. Paul's like, okay, Paul's taking the machete. He's cutting off his hair. He's putting it into the fire.
Yeah, and the other person has already made fire. Why did he spend so much time cutting off his hair?
Yeah, so we talked about this. I think Paul is a really intriguing wild card this season. I think he is someone who is going to be incredibly physical, so I could very much see him making the merge and that he's going to be a very big physical asset, especially if he's doing triathlon-like training. You know that he basically has all of his bases covered, maybe except for puzzles. But I feel like when it comes to strategy, either he's someone who can easily get lumped in as like a number to work with, or he could be someone who just completely goes rogue and goes with the flow wherever he wants to. Either way, I think he's going to make for a really different tone and style of gameplay than a lot of the other guys that we've talked about.
Yeah, there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen that is Survivor South Africa Immunity Island. And I think just having someone who can be just a social player, a nice guy, a physical asset, a team player. Like, I'm struggling to see how he could do poorly. I'm struggling to see why he wouldn't make a merge. Like, if he has been training like a triathlete and plays all these sports and isn't someone who'll necessarily be a massive strategic threat to these other like big fans or more of a similar archetype, like I would definitely be working with him.
Yeah, he definitely seems like, of all the people we've experienced so far, he's definitely is on my short list of like, who would I want to find out and join up with immediately? And I think that maybe people would want to seek the same thing. I mean, you talk about too many cooks in the kitchen. Let's go from the kitchen to the lab here, Shannon.
Nice.
Let's talk about a chemical engineer. Let's talk about Renier, who maybe is on the opposite end of the fan spectrum from Paul, particularly because he has a lot to say about Survivor history. Here is Renier.
Hi, Shannon. It's a massive privilege for me to be on your show. I've been listening to all your podcasts over the years and with Mike as well. Thank you for having me.
So we're going to start with that, considering that he does shout you out in the beginning. Shows him how much of a fan he is.
I love Renier. I know it's not like the big reaction that I had to Dino because obviously the cast launched since we did that first podcast and Renier sent me like a really nice voice note. So I was smiling listening to that, but I did know that he was a fan. And of course, as he shouted us out, he is now my tied winner pick with Dino. That's how it works.
Ooh.
I reserve the right to have an actual winner pick, right? Like I don't have to, I'm not tied to this.
Shannon, you made your bed. Let's inspect that bed, the Renier bed.
30 seconds in. Yeah, you better do well, Renier.
Yeah, you're pot committed at this point, so let's see what hand you have here. So to start, tell us about yourself. Your name, your age, your occupation, and what you like doing.
My name is Renier, and I'm 29 years old. I'm a chemical engineer from Secunda, works at the big petrochemical company.
Why are you here on Survivor?
I'm playing Survivor because it's the literally last thing which I need in my Survivor experience. I'm a massive, massive fan. Seen all the episodes of all the international seasons. I love the game, me and my wife both. So this is like the cherry on top of my Survivor cake.
What's your history with Survivor?
So I've seen what is to be seen on Survivor. I've seen almost 50 seasons if you include the American, South African, Australian, New Zealand seasons. My wife and I have started watching everything from season 1 again not very long ago just to catch us up on all the cool Survivor blindsides and idols which was played. So I believe there is nothing left of Survivor old or new, which I don't know at this stage.
What's one life experience you feel has prepared you most for the game?
Actually, this question would have looked a lot different a year ago, because during the last year, the lockdown which we did experience, that was quite a change in my life. I was forced to work from home for 6 months or 8 months, actually, and I have a 1-year-old baby, now 1-year-old, then when lockdown started, just 6 months old, and spending the time with him and growing as a father for this baby, and also for a husband, for my wife, really opened up the unselfish part of my life, the part where I really care for other people, where I want to see other people flourish, where I want to see this little baby become a human being which can look after himself and prosper in life. And that has really filled my heart to an extent where I want to see that for the other contestants as well. Yes, we're going to compete against each other. We want to beat one another, but it's also part of the game where you want to see the person next to you being happy. You want to see that person surviving. It's tough not having your family members there. It's tough being out there in the wild, but you want to see them prosper in some kind of weird sense, but you also want to beat them. So yeah, that has been quite a journey for me over the last year.
Steers. So, okay, we got to talk about this, or at least I would like to talk about this, because I don't think I felt more seen in an answer to a question so far than when you're talking about raising a 6-month-old child in lockdown, considering that I raised a 1-year-old in lockdown last year.
Yeah, I was definitely thinking of you. And I also feel I haven't been more seen than when Renier said, "Hi, Shannon, I love your podcast." So I think between the two of us, he is really just capturing something. But I think that is a good answer. I think for a lot of people, the last year might be an experience that would prepare them best for Survivor, that sense of isolation, maybe some struggles that they've gone through, definitely a sense of like change, and I think a lot of introspection. I'm surprised that COVID hasn't come up more in these interviews. I mean, we have to remember, these people were going out there after the our collective nightmare that whole year, ongoing for many people. And I think that I am surprised that it hasn't been more prevalent, more top of mind for these answers.
I do wonder maybe if it's because of like your change in lifestyle, right? I feel like everyone we talked about so far either, is not in a relationship or is not married or has kids like a Marisha, but they were not necessarily at this formative age. I mean, again, I can speak firsthand to this. The first couple of years of a child's life are just completely wildly different from every other years of their life, because they're literally learning how to become a person, learning how to do basic things like walk and talk and eat. And so I think that to watch someone undergo that change specifically, I mean, it was certainly transformative for me. Like, I think Asher coming into my life really made me rethink so much. I co-sign completely what he said about opening up sort of the unselfish part of my life. Not to say I was a complete Scrooge before this, and like this was the form of the 3 ghosts coming to tell me about my life. But I think when you are, I don't want to use the word force, but when your priorities now involve an entirely different person who cannot fend for themselves for a good portion of time, you really have to realign sort of your mindset about the world. And I think Renier really feels that. I could see why people might, have look at the world or look at people a different way because of COVID. But I don't know if anything is as seismic as maybe what Renier is vocalizing here. Now, that being said, I think he and I, by proxy, do not want to necessarily discount everyone else's experience. I don't want it to be like, well, Renier is the only one who knows what it's like to be unselfish because he's a parent. Everyone has families. Everyone makes sacrifices for the people that they love. I just think this was like a very pertinent one for my own life experience. To your point, I'm sure people have also made sacrifices. Maybe it's just a matter of this past year, things were most different for him compared to his day to day. And so he wanted to vocalize it.
I also think like lockdown and COVID is so difficult for everyone. But even like in spending time, I spent a lot of time during lockdown outside with masks on for the 1 hour a day that we were allowed with my little cousins who at the time were 1, 2, and 4. And, that was that hour of the day. But I did find for me, I was wallowing. I was allowed to wallow. I'm like a childless person who didn't have to think about much else. And could be kind of sad in that. But then when I would go out and play with the kids, you can't just be this like mopey sad person hanging out with them, right? Like you have to push yourself to be cheery and be there for them as they like are in their formative years in lockdown. And I can't imagine what that was like for parents who were going through it themselves, but had to really like be there and be a parent and a teacher and everything for their children. So I feel like I have seen that to a very, very small degree of what it must have been like to be like, I can't focus on the fact that we're all in the worst year of our lives right now. I have to really just push myself for my kids. And I think in Survivor, there's parts of that where you might want to wallow or mope around and it might be hard, but you have to push yourself because you're on Survivor. You are a team player. You have to think about other people. So I think that is like a helpful trait to take into Survivor.
It should also be noted, because we made note of this in our last podcast, he did shout out New Zealand Survivor as well when he was going through all the seasons. So yes, truly he has indeed.
I don't think anyone is questioning whether he's a super fan.
I know, but we gave a shout out. We gave kudos to someone mentioning New Zealand Survivor in the last podcast. So I feel like we should give Renier his fair due as well.
Yes, but that is superseded by he called us out directly, and that makes you even more of a super fan because it's my scale that I'm giving, and I've decided that.
I also think it's interesting that he says that this sort of like unselfish tear that he is on in his life has given him this idea to have other people flourish as well. It does give me a little bit of pause. I don't necessarily think that this means, oh yeah, Renier's going to like give up the game, to help somebody else along. But I do wonder if he has this attitude going through to sort of help others before you help yourself necessarily. Could that be a type of attitude that might end up doing him in?
I don't see that. Like, I think he's a more well-rounded person because he's a father and he was a father in lockdown. Difficult thing to do, but he still is clearly like the smart superfan engineer. Like, I don't see that being his undoing.
What do you think people will perceive you as?
I think I'm quite relatable at the moment, being a young father, doing my 9-to-5 job, coming home to my 2 dogs, my wife and my baby. Something which a lot of South Africans and even American, Australians, people all around the world can say, I know either a Renier or someone like Renier, or maybe I am Renier. And being a family person, but also a massive fan of this game, I think I tick 2 boxes of people who perceive me as the ultimate fan, but also someone with the ultimate caring heart. And I hope to tick both of those boxes.
Cheers.
Yeah, I know that person. It's Mike Bloom.
Aw, thank you. I'm getting a lot of Jeremy Collins vibes from Renier right now, because that was sort of the why Jeremy was so beloved in Second Chances, right? Was like because he had that head for that game, the passion, but I think he also had the family story, that vibe with especially a lot of that cast out there. That I think, especially when he gets to the finale against Spencer and Tasha, and is able to provide that story at the end, like that handily gave him the win unanimously. And so I think Renier is bringing up some salient points here about how maybe he's able to sort of get along with the younger types that are childless, but maybe fans of the game, and maybe those older parental types that are looking for someone to bond with experiences over.
I'm thinking Nick Iadanza in All Stars, in that he can't ever shed what is like a pretty clear archetype of the fan. Literally, the second I saw him in the video, I was like, I don't even know who you are, but you are a fan of the game. Hate to stereotype, but that's what we have to do. And he's a new father, and that's kind of changed his perspective. And when Nick came back on All Stars, he'd been like the frenetic superfan on his first season, but I think he tapped into a lot of like the parent vibe, the young parent vibe, where your child is very young and you're like leaving behind a child that is transforming every day, and that's like a really big part of your story. Also, I love Nick and he loves me. Same with Renier. He seems to love me. I love him back. So yeah, I think I can see a lot of Nick 2.0 in Renier.
Well, he might as well. Let's keep listening to that.
Oh.
Which Survivor player are you most like?
That's a difficult question actually to answer, but I think I will. If I may, I want to throw a combination of 3 people. So my favorite player of all time is hands down Parvati Shallow. Parvati is incredible with her social game, and I really look up to that and hope that I can have a similar social effect, not necessarily from the flirty side like Parvati did so well, but to be able to build alliances, strategies completely around the social part of the game like she did so well. Then in addition to Parvati, Adam Klein is also someone I think, although I didn't like him at first, he really grew on me, and I'm really getting to see the little Adam inside of me, the strategist, which is this ultimate fan of the game, and then starts to navigate.
Little Adam inside.
Little Adam inside.
I don't want to let it go.
Biography. Thank you very much.
I was trying to not, and I couldn't. I'm sorry.
No, it's an incredible phrase. The little Adam inside of me.
So good.
Renier, think about your marriage.
Also, I feel like it's the worst compliment. It's like, I didn't like him at first, but he grew on me. It's not a compliment I would take.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I guess that means that Winners at War Adam, I know that people had gripes with his edit, but maybe he grew on one person, and that person was Renier. Just look out for any fleur-de-lis, Renier. That little Adam might tell you to pick it when really it's nothing.
Ultimate fan of the game, and then starts to navigate through the game, realizing, oh, it's not only about strategy. Oh, it's not only about knowing the game. You have to be there for the people. You have to have the social side, the poverty side of it. You have to bring that as well. And then in the same context, I think Nico Danza from Aussie Survivor, very, very much the same part of me that Adam also ticks.
Cheers. So, yeah.
I feel
there we go.
Oh my God, Renier, we just same level. I love that just happened. That was great.
Yeah, so I mean, you two are on the same wavelength. Maybe with that podcast shout out, he dipped into the time stream, knew that you would listen to this interview, get Nick vibes, and say Nick in a future answer.
I honestly, it was such a strong tension. I'm like, I feel like this is deja vu for me. Where do I know this? I'm like, oh right, I had a friend go out to play Survivor who was like leaving a small child and had been transformed by that experience, but would always be like the sneaky super fan because you can't shed how you look and how you think and who you clearly are. And that is Nick. And obviously Renier and I both connected to that. So there you go, winner pick. Great job, tied winner pick. Anyone who mentions me is my winner pick. Yeah.
That bed's looking better and better.
Mm-hmm.
What do you desire in an alliance partner?
I think the best thing for me in an alliance partner will be someone who feels that Renier's got their best interest at heart. Renier wants to take them to a final. And the more someone else feels safe with me being there, the less the chance of them getting rid of me. So not necessarily a specific character trait, but someone who feels that Renier will be there for me, come tough or high waters, he'll be there.
What is the ethical or moral line for you in the game of Survivor?
I've thought about this so much, and my wife and I actually discussed this at length before I came. And where I've taken the decision here is that I play the game according to the rules. If I play a game of rugby or a game of soccer, then on the field, if the situation requires it, I'll make the hardest tackle I can possibly make in order to help my team win the game. When we go off the field, I'll probably buy the guy a beer, not tackle him in the clubhouse, because that's frowned upon. That's not who I am. I'd rather shake his hand and say, hey, good game. And for me, Survivor is exactly the same. When I go into the game of Survivor, I need to make a tackle, or in the rules of Survivor, I need to tell a lie, need to deceive. That is part of the game, and therefore, I would not mind doing it. But I also know that someone else might be able to do it to me. What I do, I'll have to be able to accept as well. But outside of the game, once we step outside of the community of Survivor again, there's no way you'll find me telling that lie or deceiving someone, because that's not who I am. Inside the game, where the rules allow it, I will take advantage of it.
Steers. So I want to take this opportunity to parse in some stuff from Renier's bio, because this isn't necessarily things he won't do from a moral perspective, but things he said he'd actually never do in the game. So first, I think earlier to the points we made about him sort of wanting to support other people, he said, voting out someone I've stuck my neck out for will be tough. I realize that the characters I've been watching play the game are real people you start caring for. Caring too much for the person next to me can be a downfall. So again, that's an interesting point that he himself acknowledges. But apparently Renier told his wife there are 3 things he'd never do in the game. 1, vote out a strong physical player before the merge. 2, play an idol for someone else. Or 3, forfeit a challenge.
That's interesting that he would never play an idol for someone else, because I was just getting vibes of another player. This is going to be very complimentary, and that player did play an idol for someone else, and it was a great move. But he also says, I've got a massive love for Survivor, but it's trumped by my love for Christ and his calling for me to love people, which will be evident in the game. My wife and I have watched every season of Survivor out there. It's my dream to be able to play the game. So, Werner vibes. I mean, they're both from Secunda.
Hashtag Werner vibes.
Yeah, exactly. We're making that happen. Werner as well, massive fan, family man as well, Christian man, obviously was a pastor, so that speaks for itself. I can see a lot of that. And Werner, like, his approach to religiousness and the game was very refreshing, because I think a lot of people get bogged down in it, but he did know that it was just a game. He gave himself extreme permission to play the game, but with that kindness that Mike was referring to earlier, where you can be duplicitous but not malicious. I think Werner was well on the side of the line of being kind while being a great player. So I could see a lot of that with Renier. Maybe it is the fact that they're from like the same place and it's the only times I've heard of that place.
It's in the water.
They probably know each other. How big is this place?
Yeah, these rules that he set up with himself are so interesting. Maybe not rules so much as like guidelines, because he follows it up by saying those 3 things just go against every survivor grain in my body. So it's not like he's saying, I will not do it because it goes against my code. It's more so like, I personally don't believe in doing these things. But they're so oddly specific. And I feel like there are instances in every part of this where like it can strategically be viable for you.
Yeah.
Especially playing an idol for someone else. Like, again, I invoked Jeremy
exactly.
before.
We keep invoking him to people he disagrees with their moves. I mean, voting out a strong player pre-merge, definitely something that a lot of people do. Forfeited challenge. What is forfeit? I guess we'll probably get to that next.
I think he's sort of teased Team Eliza Orleans, I think, of like never throw a challenge pre-merge because you never know what'll happen. But again, there is strategic merit to doing so, especially say there's a swap and he ends up on the right side of the numbers. That is definitely the right thing to do.
Yeah, the game of Survivor is way too adaptable to have such hard and fast rules. But look, he only told his wife. Will it matter? Will his wife hold him to that? I think if it's a good move, hopefully in the moment he'll be like, I am going to do this thing.
Exactly. Like, how much will he stick to his 3 Survivor commandments? I guess it remains to be seen. Would you rather be voted out pre-merge or get 0 votes at the final tribal council?
Oh, definitely out pre-merge. I cannot see myself being dragged along by someone else, being their puppy dog, just to take me to the final and say, okay, guys, it's me or the useless guy next to me, and then I get 0 votes. I will not outlive that tag. That'll be terrible. So I'd rather go before merge.
Steve. I love that question. My favorite part about it is how incredulous everyone is that anyone could choose the other one because it's so terrible. Yep. They're both terrible options.
The mic, right? They're like, oh, who the hell would answer the other one? But no, Renier is here to play. He refuses to be a goat, refuses to be someone's puppy dog. Insert your animal metaphor here, but he's essentially like, let me go out in a blaze of glory instead of ever being perceived as like the weaker player in a pair.
I think I really found the perfect would you rather. Like a great would you rather is this split between the like everyone thinking that one thing is so bad. You know, if it was all to one side, it would have been a really bad and uneven would you rather. But this is obvious. This is like my favorite question now.
Yeah, though I don't know if I don't know any other questions that have invoked someone eating their loved one. So this will hold a silver medal to that. Be the biggest component of your game: physical, strategy, or social?
That's actually a very good question and a hard question. When I applied for Survivor the first time, I said definitely physical. Physical, I'll be dominating up front. Then when I applied the second time, I said strategical. I'm smart. I will get this. But now, after all of that, I'm actually leaning more towards social. I think my heart for the other players, sitting in my room and praying for the other players in the game, has just given me really a lot of compassion for everyone. Really a love for the other people, wanting to be there for them. If they miss their family, need a shoulder to cry on, I will be there for them. And that'll be sincere. But although that is sincere, I also know that helps the social game a lot. And I really do bank on that.
Steers. So yeah, it should be noted, obviously we're talking about a lot about his braininess, his fandom, and I think that draws like a certain picture in your head. But if you look at Renier's cast photo, he's got a good chunk of physical strength as well. So I think if you are looking for someone that could represent possibly, at least the way he's describing it, all 3 of those facets that we asked about, Renier is kind of that.
I thought you were going to say he has a good chunk of hair they could use to make fire.
No, listen, he's got the fro, but Paul, you get away from that hair, okay? I don't know if the fro is easy of a fire catcher as maybe the dreads are.
Yeah, look, we heard a lot about people giving themselves haircuts in lockdown. Taking a machete to your hair is too far, people. Like, I cannot get on board. I can't get on board with a haircut.
If you're starting, it's also, like, I do recall that the smell of burning hair is also just, like, awful. Absolutely terrible. Wait,
you do recall?
I do remember.
How do you, and is that a memory that sticks out for you? Maybe in some of the bullying with the buff?
Yeah, exactly. What
are we
burned my
unpacking?
Survivor buff with my hair inside of it. No, I mean, I do remember, like, stinging hair or something, like when you burn your hair in a curling iron or something, right? Like,
is that
it smells.
Something you do a lot of?
I often do. Listen, this beautiful hair, it takes a lot of work, beauty is pain or whatever that phrase is. But I do wonder if it's
that is true though. Like I get free hair tools a lot because I am the editor of a hair magazine, The Hair. And once I got this like curling
Wait, the hair magazine for hair, did you have to qualify like that?
I just wanted to say hair again. Say hair again. No, so it was like this curling machine, and you put your hair in it. It would like suck the hair in, and it would come out. Ideally, it would come out curly, but instead, it never came out, and it was attached to my hair, and the hair burning smell was starting, and it was traumatizing. But then you're right, that smell is bad. It's a bad smell, so you're right.
Yeah, I guess any port in a storm, but I love this idea that you essentially put like a Willy Wonka-esque machine on your head that would plop out curled hair.
No, it was like it's like a clamp thing. In hindsight, you put your hair in it, it sucks the hair in, and it comes out curly, or it doesn't come out at all, and it's a scarring experience in many ways.
Yeah, or it starts a fire, and then you've got a survivor party going.
Yeah.
What's your favorite advantage in Survivor history?
Yo, there has been so many, but it must be being able to cast a second vote. We saw that in Survivor Season 30 in Worlds Apart when Dave had the ability to cast a second vote. And there's just no way around it. You can disrupt an entire alliance if the minority can now suddenly move themselves into the majority. And you can also use it as a bargaining tool, suddenly telling someone, listen, I know it's difficult for you to come over, but I've got a little bit of extra juice to drag you to my side. So I think extra vote, as simple as it is, must be the best there is. I hate the nullifier. Oh, that's the worst thing ever. If I need to see that, I'm going to cry.
Steers, there definitely is going to be an idol nullifier then being brought out. As soon as Renier said that, I thought they're going to have to bring this out now to make him cry.
But everyone else loves the idol nullifier. So many people have answered the idol nullifier as like their favorite advantage in this question. I was actually thinking, what is going on with that? Now Renier hates it, so we'll see.
Yeah, I think the idol nullifier is an interesting concept. I think it was maybe what Kieran said about how like it's almost 0 for 2 because in season 37 it completely screwed over Dan. I was thinking what you wanted to about Hot Cop Dan, but he really had nothing he could do in preparation for the idol nullifier.
People love that
though. It was a big moment, but it never existed before. And then in 39, Kieran brings up the fact that like it was in way too late. You can talk the world about how that whole coin flip thing that Dean went through was just such like a big, sliding doors moment for the season at large. But I guess people really like the idea, the extra layer of strategy it adds on. It's just now that they know about it, it's something they can actually play with as long as it doesn't enter the game at final 6 or whatever.
No, I mean, the idol nullifier is a bad twist because it's just like the moment of playing an idol that is that exciting thing, and you nullify it. It's just like a wet blanket advantage. I don't think we will see it. I don't think LaRue would do that.
I don't know. Well, I think it's interesting that that both Renier and some other people brought up the extra vote too, because I think you have also proven in the past how the extra vote / vote steal is actually one of the like on paper biggest utility, but has very, if ever, been executed well in Survivor.
Look, it's a hard question because so many of the advantages are not good. Like that's what's the difficult question.
It's the true trick question.
Yeah, this is the trick question. And I think, Mike gave both of our answers, which was like the simple hidden immunity idol just has had so much impact in the game. Just need a little bit less of it maybe. But I think, yeah, that's where we would both go with it. It's a tough question. I apologize for unleashing that question on the world. Should have been, what is your least favorite advantage? Then we could go on.
Well, Renier gave both, so don't worry.
And I know what I hate. There. Another joke from one of the first podcasts. If you haven't listened, go back.
What celebrity or fictional character would you want to come out for a loved one's visit?
Roger Federer. Six love. Man, I'm a massive Roger Federer fan. Like up there, Survivor fan, biggest, and then shortly on his heels, Roger Federer fan. I love tennis. I grew up as a tennis player, played a lot of tennis all over the country. I've actually seen 2 of Roger Federer's matches, one in Cape Town and one in London. Went there specifically for the match. I'm a massive Federer fan.
What food would you sit out an immunity challenge for?
Oh, yes. Like, I can't say this before the season. That is terrible. But if I really have to set out a challenge for food, it will probably be pizza. I'm quite a sucker for a pizza.
If you could have any superpower, what would it be and why?
Oh, mind reading, definitely. I'm so engulfed in this Survivor way of thinking that I think mind reading that's the one thing that'll get you not only so far in the game, but so far in anything else, whether it is your occupation, just figuring out what your wife is thinking, or whatever the case may be. I think reading minds.
If you want to know what your wife is thinking, just ask her, Renier.
No, listen, it's been a tough year in lockdown. They've been raising a 6-month-old baby.
Got a lot of insight into this marriage. I want to be able to read minds so I know what my wife is thinking. I love that. As a newly-ish married person, I love that.
Yeah, I'm excited for Mrs. Renier to come out so that he can read her mind and then take a big bite out of her shoulder.
Not all of them are going to eat their loved ones, just most of them.
Oh, now it's in my head, Shannon. It has to be promised. Each and every loved one needs to be eaten.
You try taking a bite out of Thanos. It's not going to go well for you.
He'll take a bite out of you back.
This will be epic.
So it's about 24 hours before the game starts at the time you're recording this. What's going through your head as you're about to enter the game?
It's actually a good thing for me knowing that it's only one more night, because now I'm starting to, this excitement which I've been suppressing a little bit over the last couple of days just to not freak out totally, I can start releasing that a little bit now. I'm getting excited. I'm thinking about how the first day will be, what to do, what not to do. And then every time when I just have my whole strategy planned out, I realize, okay, Renier, forget about that. Put that in the closet, because this is going to be one epic ride which you can't plan. So I'm actually getting very, very excited knowing that we are less than 24 hours away.
It's an epic ride you can't plan, except for the 3 things he said he would never do in the game.
The 3 things that I would say are maybe the 3 most situational decisions you can make. Let's see. Voting someone a physical threat out pre-merge, so situational. Playing an idol for someone else, so situational. And throwing a challenge, maybe the most situational thing that you can get on the show. 3 rules that should not be hard and fast, but as he said, we'll see how it goes. I have faith in him. I have faith for a lot of different reasons. Obviously, we're reading each other's minds, which is something that he wants to do so we can know what I'm thinking and his wife. So, yeah, I love Renier. Obviously, he caught us out from the first second, and I was all in from there. I'm a very self-interested person.
I'm very excited for Renier. I think, obviously, he has a big head for the game, though I think he's not necessarily in, or at least he has not professed himself as like so much of an overthinker. It actually seems like he's more so speaking from like the empathetic side of things than more so the strategic side. And again, we just talked about this, how much realizing you're playing with living, breathing people is the thing to remember at the end of the day. And so I do think Renier really has his head in the game in that regard. I do think, as I mentioned before, he does seem like one of the most complete packages we have on the show in terms of physicality, having the brains for the game, but also having, I think, that caring nature and ticking those boxes. As he would say, the issues come with the fact that A, sometimes a perfect full package does not necessarily mean you win. Sometimes it means you're voted out second just due to the circumstances that happen. And B, if he is indeed holding himself hard and fast to those 3 rules, and he finds himself in a situation where these things should happen because they'd be profitable to him, and he doesn't take that road, he's making up himself a purposefully tougher road to take. And as we mentioned before, that's never ideal in the game of Survivor.
I think we might be hanging on to this like throwaway bio line way too much. I think that he will give himself permission to break something if he absolutely needs to. For me, my concern is like way too threatening. As you said, like he is the triple threat, which is threatening. Say threat again. You know, if he's like physically
for hair,
he wouldn't vote out a physical threat pre-merge, but someone else might. He looks like a fan. He looks smart. He is an engineer. There's no hiding behind that. He is a young dad who has a story. He's a Christian man. Like, there's a clear empathy, clear social game. Like, they're going to realize they need to vote him out. Like, this is such a difficult game.
Yeah. I mean, we have seen how, again, cutthroat some of the people in this cast are. This could be a thing where, sort of like a Seamus, they see him, you know, doing stuff in the first couple votes, and it's like, oh, he's way too threatening for the end. Let's take him out on day 6. So it's not to say that he necessarily has longevity, but I do think if he has his feet, you know, on the ground and is able to get off to a good running start, he's going to get at a damn good pace for the vast majority of this game.
I think it would have to be a Jeremy Collins game, as you said, like, you know, evoking Jeremy there. And he did it on the second time in one of my favorite winning games ever because it's so hard. And what happens to Jeremy is he goes out at like, you know, mid-merge or early to mid-merge because he's so threatening. He has a story at the end. He can win challenges and he's clearly really smart. And that is my concern for Renier, which is like a great compliment, I would say.
All right, so we're going to move on here to Shannon, the oldest person in the cast at age 40. This is Shaun. I will warn you ahead of time, and the listeners as well, there is some explicit language in this one. Shaun does not mince words, and you are going to find that out immediately. So to start, tell us about yourself, your name, your age, your occupation, and what you like doing.
Hi, my name is Shaun Wilson. I'm 40. Yay.
You said that, didn't you?
I told you immediately.
Okay, you prepared me, and I wasn't prepared for that. Okay.
But yes, he's 40.
Yeah,
he's 40.
He's 40. We know that now.
Two F words, 40 and that other one.
Okay.
I feel like I'm turning 14. I'm a geek by trade, and a geek. Yeah, I'm just a geek. It's simple as that. I'd love to say what I do in tech, but most of you wouldn't understand what I do. But I work in augmented and virtual reality, as well as in the medical field with my brother. And that's about it.
Why are you here on Survivor?
Well, the reason I'm on Survivor is it's been a dream since 2000. Ever since I watched the first season, I've been wanting to play. I've entered every season.
Shaun, everyone knows Survivor started in 1990, please.
Yeah, this is embarrassingly incorrect answer from you. I want to say we are one F word and 30 seconds into the interview, and I'm already thinking Shaun or Shane. I don't know if it's because their names are so similar. Obviously, Shane from Survivor, South Africa champions. Maybe it's the fact that he said we wouldn't understand what he does. That kind of like fun confidence and arrogance. I'm picturing, because I don't have the images in front of me because I was unprepared for this podcast. I'm picturing Shane. They kind of sound the same. I don't know.
Can you just imagine him sitting in a towel right now giving this interview?
He's definitely in a towel, for sure.
Yeah, it's actually, he does AR and VR, and it's just all VR where you imagine yourself sitting in a towel at all times.
Season didn't make any of them, but finally I'm on it, and I cannot wait to play.
What's your history with Survivor?
So, as I said, I am a geek, so I've had a lot of time to watch Survivor. I've watched every single season, including South Africa, Australia. Not so much the New Zealand one. It wasn't that good, unfortunately.
So fair, Shaun. That's fine. You're still a super fan. It's all good.
Yeah, I mean, like you said last time, like New Zealand season 1 is rough. So I can imagine why you decided to. New Zealand season 2 is absolutely
it's really good, Shaun. You
should
should watch it. It's really
but
good.
I would understand if at that point he's like, I'm going to bail. If this is a New Zealand thing, I'm good.
Totally fair. Totally fair.
But yeah, I'm an absolute fan. My favorite Survivor player would be, from the last few years, be David Gant, the Golden God. I think his gameplay was awesome. The fact that he was always on the block in the beginning, but everyone wanted to play with him, which was surprising, because generally you want to get the threats out first. And the way he manipulated and controlled the game with his secret alliances, as well as finding every idol and backstabbing his friends, I just thought was amazing gameplay.
What's one life experience you feel has prepared you most for the game?
My life experience that has prepared me for this game is being backstabbed by my business partners. In life.
Why is it like the third time this has come up in these interviews? Like, I'm concerned about what's going on.
We had a patron respond to that, actually, because I think it was Dino that brought it up, right? Of like, what are these?
No, it was Chappie.
Was it Chappie? Yeah, someone. It
wasn't just Chappies, though.
I think Dino said it too.
It was. It's come up too many times, is what I will say.
Yeah, business seems like an incredibly harsh world, but I think they also brought up the point of like, if you're being betrayed by multiple business partners multiple times, are you the problem?
I don't know. It's either there's something wrong with you or something wrong with South Africa. So maybe I will try and put it on these people personally.
My dad always said, if you're going to get into business, control 51%. And I feel that is important in this game, is because if you control 51% of the game, you can win Survivor.
What do you think people will perceive you as?
Well, it depends. People could perceive me as a villain in the morning and a hero in the evening. It all depends on how the gameplay goes. So I'm hoping to give people good TV, good entertainment, and hopefully last 39 days.
Which Survivor player are you most like?
I used to feel like I was Colby in the early days, but that's when I was young and fit and could do the challenges. But now I feel more, like I said, David Gant, the Golden God.
Wait, Steers. You were Colby, and now that you're not young and fit, you are international male model, prime physical specimen, David. I mean, that's barely a de-evolution. I think that might be an improvement even.
I mean, David is nearly 40, is he not?
He is 40, but he's not like, oh, I used to be like cool, strong Colby, and now I'm just glad David. Like, he's 40, but
yeah, exactly.
He's David 40.
I'm cool, strong Colby, but now that I've gone in my age, I'm now cool, strong David.
What an aging process. I mean, you can't ask for any better than that. I thought he would be like, well, now I'm Colby in a, Superman in a fat suit, what Colby became, but no, he just went to the next Golden God, literally the Golden God. Like, can't complain about that.
From Full Tilt to Golden God, I don't think I've heard someone invoke old school Kobe and these comparisons in a long time. Maybe it's just because of the people they cast nowadays on Survivor, but I don't think of many people that are like, yeah, I used to be like Colby, or like at one stage in your life, you were a Colby Donaldson type.
I think maybe just people don't want to put themselves on that level because Colby Donaldson.
Exactly. Yeah, like he got a Harley and everything. He was in Red Eye.
Very similar age, very similar stories, except I don't have the wife and I don't have the kids, which makes my life a little easier because I've got less to miss while I'm away.
What do you desire in an alliance partner?
I want someone that can make me laugh in an alliance, purely because it's going to be a tough time out there. And if I'm in an alliance with people that I don't get along with and I cannot have fun with, I don't think I could work with them because they'll just irritate the hell out of me. And if someone's irritating me, I cannot hide it. They have to go. I'm sorry. It's not that you might be a great person out of the game, but in the game, you might not be the best person for me.
What Steers? Well, I should also note that I cut this out, but literally in the middle of the interview, right after this question, he says, I'm going to be such a villain.
I was just thinking he needs to find the Marion to his Shane because he's Shane. It's crazy to me.
Well, I think it's interesting criteria. We've talked so much about whether it's finding someone who's opposite to you, someone who vibes with you. Shaun's tryouts for an ally, it's going to be, tell me your best joke.
I love that.
And make me laugh.
But that's such a good answer. I don't think it's one that people would go to because it doesn't seem obvious and it might seem a little silly, literally silly by nature. But yeah, you are out there struggling. You need someone you're going to have fun with. You need someone that you can vibe with. And that makes it a good time and that makes it enjoyable. Then you're feeling your best and then you work your best. I think that's a really good answer.
Well, it's very much out of the David playbook, right? And I think it's because David was that person to other people. He was just so much fun to get along with that people wanted to work with him. And David, by proxy, got that from Luke, too. So I think we have him really trying to channel a lot of things out of David's playbook, which is going to be incredibly entertaining, whether or not it works out. Is the ethical or moral line for you in the game of Survivor?
In Survivor, I think you need to check your morals at the door because unfortunately there are no morals in a game of Survivor. Just like with any game, you need to give your all. And for me, I don't think I have any lines I won't cross unless it's to do with killing a chicken or killing an animal. Yes, I eat steak, I eat chicken. I'm the biggest carnivore there is. But I don't think I could allow someone to kill an animal in front of me. So more than likely, I'll end up setting the chickens free.
Steers. Okay. Yep. So big Wendy Shaun is coming to Survivor South Africa Season 8.
That's so great because he is this big, strong, arrogant villain. And I thought when he said, I just wouldn't kill, I thought he was going to say like a human being. I was like, yeah, well, that's frowned upon in the game. But he won't kill a chicken as a vegetarian. I just really love that. It's such a little soft layer to this character type that we really enjoy, this strong villain character type, but that we've seen several times again. We enjoy it every time we see it, but now you got this little cool different thing, and I love that.
But he's still gonna Shaun at the end of the day, where he's gonna say I won't pull a Kimmy Kappenberg and disapprove of the chicken being killed. No, I will free the chickens and let them go so they don't have to face any sort of torture from any of these human beings. So still, he's doing something villainous and causing chaos for the camp in the plight of doing something good.
Is it villainous, though? Yes, it is for them.
You just answered your own question.
I don't know. It's hard for me not to be on the side of the chickens. I'm very on board with this whole answer and this whole vibe.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I think it's going to be a little late at the time we're talking to these contestants, but Shaun's tribe members, watch out if you have chickens, because those things are going to get freed in like T-minus 4 hours after you get them.
I don't know, Mike. A lot of the people said they would like time travel. So if they time traveled forward, I guess not to in the game to see what would happen, but to our interviews to hear what people are saying before the game, we can let them know.
No, didn't you hear? You want to every day is like a Shangri-La when you hang out with the Romans. That's where they're going, not 30 days earlier into the game.
Yeah.
Would you rather be voted out pre-merge or get 0 votes at the final tribal council?
Oh God, getting 0 votes on the tribal council is a failure. That means you haven't played the game. So I'd rather play hard and get voted out early than play soft and not get any votes.
What will be the biggest component of your game? Physical, strategy, or social?
Yes, in Survivor, it's about being social, strategic, and physical. But I think it's going to revolve around being mentally strong. Because in the game of Survivor, if you can be mentally strong, I think you can handle any situation. And I think you can adapt to being social. I think you can adapt to being physical. And I think you can adapt to being emotional. For me, being mentally strong is what's going to count for my game.
What's your favorite advantage in Survivor history?
My favorite advantage would be the secret alliances, the alliances that you don't suspect, because everyone assumes that, this is who you're lying next to, this is who you're talking to, and that's who they perceive your alliance to be. And I think if you can actually, again, it's going back to David, having the alliance with Matt that no one suspected. And that was an unbelievable advantage because he understood what his opposing alliance was doing and he knew what his alliance was doing. And I think that is a great thing to have in Survivor.
Steers. Okay, Shaun, you're giving me so many interesting answers, but I think you misunderstood the
That's
assignment.
all right. Look, it is an advantage on Survivor. We didn't say, I guess, there's no other word for that. Look, he slightly misconstrued it, but he still gave us a great answer. Shaun is great.
I don't know. I love this idea, though, of like the commodification. Like, imagine you get a little token in your bag that says, you now have the ability to make a secret alliance by giving this coin to one other person in the game.
But Mike said fake idol, and that was a great answer. Like, these are man-made things, not production, but player-made things. And I'm loving the way people are interpreting this question because, again, hard question, most advantages are terrible.
Exactly. The best way to win the game is to not play. What celebrity or fictional character would you want to come out for a loved one's visit?
Look, if I could have anyone come out to my family visit, it would be my dogs. I know that's it's not normal, but I would love to have my dogs because for me, that centers me. It allows me to have that complete love that no one really understands unless you're an animal lover. So fuck the celebrities, give me my animals.
What? Steers?
I like the idea that his dogs are celebrities. Like, my cat has 1,500 Instagram followers. She would be my celebrity guest for sure. Follow her on Instagram, @EvilCatMelody.
I think F celebrities, give me my animals is like such big Twitter energy. I absolutely love it.
Shaun gives 0 Fs, and yet so many Fs.
Yeah, I mean, he's
loving
saying a lot of them, but Shaun is a big dog person. He took the tag from his recently passed dog Penny's collar on the show with him because he needed a piece of home to remind him of basically like who he is. So, I mean, listen, we have a dog person playing against a literal cat. There's going to be fireworks.
What, you mean the cannibal cat lawyer? Mike Claus?
See the CCL, Mike Claus himself.
I'm so sorry, Mike. It wasn't fair what we did to you. I love Shaun. I love a good old-fashioned Survivor villain who's just a big softie for animals. Obsessed with this.
It's a weird thing. It's very much like Randy Bailey, right? Like Randy was such a grump, but like he loved his dog to death. And so it's a really fun multi-dimensional way to see a villain. I think that's what I like most about the villains is like when they have humanity to them. Say what you want to about Scott Pollard and Kyle Jason, but I really did like the way they were personified on Survivor Co. Wrong because like their villainy and headstrong attitude was rooted in their personal background, and you got to feel like it's the same thing with Shaun here. So we still have a minute left of the interview, but I'm already just so excited to see what he's going to bring to season 8 of Survivor South Africa.
But also, he makes me feel so guilty Because I didn't think of my cat as an option, and I said Lin-Manuel Miranda or Taylor Swift. Like, obviously, I'd rather see my cat than those people. I'm so sorry, Mel.
Right,
like,
Shannon, so you would eat your cat?
No,
Way to go.
I wouldn't eat her. She would eat me. We've already gone through this. Like, I just didn't even think of her as an option, and I chose stupid Lin-Manuel Miranda because he's freaking inspirational in the Shakespeare of our time. And Shaun made me realize I should have chosen my cat, and I'm a terrible pet owner, and I'm just really apologetic to her if she's listening.
Shaun is really breaking the questions here in a very fun way.
Yeah, but not in a way where we get angry at it, in a way where we then doubt who we are as people and our answers. And we were wrong and you were right, Shaun.
Food would you sit out an immunity challenge for?
No, I'm not sitting up for no food, nothing, no reward. I will compete no matter what, because the people that sit up for reward are the ones that get voted out.
If you could have any superpower, what would it be and why?
Look, if I could have any superpower on Survivor, it'd be super hearing, because then you'd be able to tell what's going on at any given time, because you can overhear every conversation, you can overhear every alliance. You could basically control the game because you can hear everything. Also, invisibility is great. You can just ask Tony with all his spy shacks. That allowed him to control the game immensely because he knew what was going on at any given time because he was invisible.
Steers, I don't think the lesson of the spy shack should be like invisibility is great.
I also think superhuman hearing, a lot of people went beyond that to just reading minds. Reading minds is like the next level of superhuman hearing. I mean, to say something that you could hear, you have to think it first. So that would be a more economical way of having that superpower.
Not to mention that I think, like, even if you had superhuman hearing, there's a chance you could probably mishear something, right? Or someone could mess up, or you'd catch them saying the wrong thing at the wrong time, catch them in a lie maybe and think it was the truth. So yeah, I do think that superhuman hearing is probably a level below reading minds. But
definitely.
I also like the image. But I also like the image of Shaun the animal lover with like big bat ears trying to listen to everyone's conversations.
They're all animals to some degree now that we're done with them.
So it's about 24 hours before the game starts at the time you're recording this. What's going through your head as you're about to enter the game?
I can't wait to get out of quarantine. I really can't wait to get out of quarantine because I just want to play. I just want to have fun. And I just want to get started because, you know, sitting here thinking about it, you can overthink, but getting out there, you actually start to do.
Shaun's ready to have fun, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun with Shaun, Shannon.
I just watched Shaun, and he was great. He was Shane. I just watched Shane on Survivor South Africa Champions. They're so similar to me. Not in a bad way, not in like we've seen this before and I'm bored of it, but just in unapologetic villain going out there to be like strong and confident, similar demographic. I feel like I know this person. I thought his answers were great, very to the point, very fun. He does say in his bio that Mike Holloway and David are his favorite players, and I blanked on Mike Holloway earlier in this podcast, so maybe I shouldn't be knighting people as super fans. Maybe I should be looking more inward about whether I am a super fan.
So that being said, he does also say in his bio that he is bullheaded, and once he commits to something, he's all in, and it's hard to change his mind. Look, I would absolutely love, from an entertainment perspective, for Shaun to really, you know, go the distance. I am not having the best impressions for Shaun at this moment. I think he is going to be so much fun TV for however many episodes that he's going to be on, but it may not be that many number of episodes.
Look, going in with a pessimistic view, just because someone who goes out there to be proudly villainous frees the chickens, does that mean they'll be voted out early? Yes. I think any time that you free the chickens, you're pretty much gone. Even as an animal lover, I hope he doesn't do that for his own longevity in the game, but I'm excited about Shaun. He's a very fun character.
Yeah, he even said that his strategy is to go in and be mischievous and have some fun, but maybe I'll come across as the, quote, crazy old guy. So again, this is who we're going to watch, and I'm so excited about it.
I mean, he's the oldest. He is 40 years old. That's not very old. Mike, you're not far from 40 yourself.
I'm 31, Shane. I'm pretty damn far from 40. How dare you?
Yeah, the next decade for you is 40.
Yeah, but that's like saying like Survivor's second chance is happening. You're like, oh, well, season 40 is coming up pretty soon. Are you thinking about what you're doing next, Survivor?
I mean, those two things did seem pretty close together. I would be concerned if I were you. Look, 40 is not very old. The fact that he's the oldest person on the cast and that if we get to a loved one's visit, someone might take him because they don't know how long he has left with his dogs is concerning to me. Obviously, that's happened before. Not a lot of age diversity in the cast, which is interesting.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second, because I think the youngest who we're actually going to get into, we're actually going to be talking about the youngest and oldest person in this batch here, because Tyson is 24, and we go all the way up to Shaun, who is 40. So yeah, only a 16-year difference between the players. It very much screams to me like Survivor Ghost Island in terms of age diversity.
And we've talked about this with LaRue. Like, he said that all the people cast originally pre-COVID came back. So we can't even say, I mean, I would totally understand if people who are more, older and more at risk wouldn't want to play Survivor at a time like COVID, or maybe just have way more responsibilities that are scarier to leave during COVID. But apparently this was the cast. So yeah, we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by it because, again, and we're going to talk about this with Tyson, actually, age is really just a number, and it's more so about life experience. We do not have anybody in their teens. Again, our youngest is at 24, so we're not actually having anybody from like the early years either. It really seems to be just around this pretty median range. Hopefully that also means that you don't necessarily have people stick out like a sore thumb, right? Like your Letitias and your Pauls of the world. But also Survivor South Africa has actually been pretty good to those on the older side of things. You had Letitia make it to the finale last season. Tom, who was 40 at the time he played, won his season. So, I mean, I think that Shaun is maybe standing on the shoulders of giants.
Are you saying age is just a number because you're almost 40?
Exactly. I'm looking at the years ahead of me, Shannon. The wrinkles are all forming on my face as we
40
speak.
is not old. You just are almost 40.
Putting my hair in a curling/dye machine so it can all burn off and I don't have to watch it go gray as the days pass by.
Bleak. Absolutely bleak. This is what I do, I round up. Much like Mike rounds down to 1990. So, yeah.
All right, well, let's finish off here. We have our final interview of the guys. And as I said, this is the youngest person in the cast. This is 24-year-old Tyson Zulu. I don't know if he is Zulu, but Tyson Zulu. He is an entrepreneur. And let's hear what the very soft-spoken Tyson has to say about the volume he's going to bring to the game. So to start, tell us about yourself, your name, your age, your occupation, and what you like doing.
My name is Tyson. I'm 24 years old, and I'm an entrepreneur and a creative.
Why are you here on Survivor?
I'm here because everyone tells me how Survivor is the toughest game you could possibly play, and as a competitor, it's something I'd love to prove myself in. I'm an extremely competitive person. I think I'm very athletic. I've played sports since I was a kid up until I grew up. So competition is something that I thrive for. It's something I live for, which is exactly why I joined Survivor.
What's your history with Survivor?
I started watching the show as a kid with my family because they're very into the show. But as the years went on, I kind of drifted away. But recently, I've kind of been getting back to it. So I really wanted to be a part of it just for the competitive aspect and winning the whole thing.
What's one life experience you feel has prepared you most for the game?
I wouldn't say trauma is my best friend, but it's definitely no stranger. I've seen things that could scar a normal human being, and what that made me do was probably toughen up as a person. I've lived through very difficult conditions growing up, so I feel like all those things kind of contribute to me having a very, very thick skin, and I feel like Survivor is a game that I won't have a problem being a part of because I'm used to that toughness of life. I've seen my father on the floor swimming in the pool of his own blood with 7 bullets in his body. I don't think that's an experience that a lot of people would live through and be fine by. And when that happened, I had a job interview 3 hours later and I still had to show up for that. So that's just testament to the fact that I've seen things and I've been through certain things that a lot of people would probably break down from.
Yeah. No, that's a good call. That would break most people. That's a lot.
God, it's when I heard that, I was absolutely blown away. Like the inner strength that you have to have, not only to get through that situation, but also to immediately move from that into a job interview, which almost like Survivor is a situation where you have to like present the best version of yourself to get what you want, is I mean, it sounds traumatizing in so many ways, and I really do think he's not overblowing things when he says trauma is no stranger to me. I think anyone who has gone through that situation is probably not as steeled to life as Tyson seems to be currently.
Yeah, because when he was going through it, just being like, I've been through stuff, I was like, you really don't have to share what it was with us. Like, we're not, like, asking you to share your trauma. I then assumed the producer followed up, asking, like, what the trauma was based on, that's what happened, yeah. And then he told her, we didn't need it. But I mean, thank you for being transparent in the interview and sharing that, because that is extreme. And we talk about the youngest contestants. Sometimes, I guess, maybe they don't have enough life experience. Tyson has a life experience. More than people who live a long, long time would have. So I think we can clarify that.
Things that I take with me to kind of build me up and make me the strong person that I am today.
What do you think people will perceive you as?
As a person, I'm naturally very charismatic and I'm good at getting along with people. But also, I'm very good at adapting and I'm a flexible person. So for a game like Survivor, where you need to be on your toes a lot, I feel like those strengths will probably benefit me more than anyone else. And in terms of my weaknesses, I've always been stubborn since a very, very young kid. So I feel like in a game like this, it could potentially be a weakness. It depends on the person, because the kind of person I am, I sort of react more than giving an impression. So some people think I'm very reserved and some people think I'm very forward. Some people think I'm very arrogant and some people think I might be shy. The one thing that I'm not shy, I'm not timid, I'm a very confident person. But at times I do tend to just be quiet because I feel like it.
Years. So I want to talk about that idea of him saying I react more than I give an impression, because on paper you might think that's a bad thing, but I think considering the number of alphas we have in this cast, I actually think that's a good thing for Tyson.
I think being able to mold yourself around the people around you like a chameleon is great on Survivor. And, you know, kind of adapting yourself to people and situations as a reactor rather than someone who kind of inserts themselves into other situations with huge personalities like something like Survivor. That would be like a skill you'd want to cultivate, not necessarily even just naturally have.
Well, I think, yeah, as a Survivor player, you naturally want to be that person that everyone comes to, right? And I think if you sort of set yourself up as the reactor, the react bro, people can come to you and sort of gauge your opinion, get your thoughts on something. And you're also not committing a cardinal sin by putting your own opinion out there and possibly putting your own foot in your mouth by, you know, maybe going after someone's tightest ally. Again, if it's done the wrong way, it might come across as wishy-washy. But it seems like with so many other headstrong people competing on this season, I do think Tyson's a nice change in pace in that he might lie a bit more back in the pocket. And then when someone comes to him and says, oh, this has happening here, we might be trying for this, what do you think? It's better for him to get approached than for him to approach others, because so many other people are doing that.
Well, he says in his bio, his greatest strength is his ability to adapt. I don't think there's anything or any situation you can throw at me that I wouldn't be able to adapt to and conquer. But then he says his weakness is he's stubborn. Or no, absolutely no one can get me to change my mind once I'm set on something. I feel like adaptability and stubbornness are mutually exclusive.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he mentioned that as well. Like, he was always stubborn since he was a kid, and that's gonna be tough. You know, is he gonna be that type of person where the first plan that he goes with is gonna be the one that he sticks to no matter what? That is tough to come by, especially in modern Survivor, where plans might even change at Tribal Council.
He'll be okay. We're reading too much into these bios. I really do believe.
What else are we supposed to do?
I know, but it's just like we see these things and we're like, this is going to be exactly 100% who they are. Whereas like maybe he's not 100% adaptable and 100% stubborn, and he'll work within some sort of human criteria of that.
Speaking of human, he does also say that he loves animals more than people.
Who doesn't? Great take.
Yeah, everyone except Shaun, I guess.
Except for me, who stupidly said Lin-Manuel Miranda.
A game like Survivor, because I obviously know what I'm there for and what I need to do, I don't think it's going to be a factor, because I'm a very social person, firstly, but I pick and choose who I want to be social with. So in a game like Survivor, where I know that I have to get people to like me, I have to get people on my side, I don't think I'm going to have a problem fitting in with anybody.
Which Survivor player are you most like?
I'm not sure. I really am not sure because as a person, I feel like I'm very layered to the kind of person that I am. And when I look at past contestants, it's very hard for me to relate 100% to each person because I pick a few things from different people, but at the end of the day, I'm still very, very unique.
What do you desire?
Who are those people, though? That's what we're asking. Anyway, he says he's not much of a fan. We've had the same thing where Carla was like too much of a fan and couldn't really like zero in on someone. So anyway, answer the question, guys. Goes without saying.
He does say in his bio that Tony is his favorite player because, quote, he played an inventive game. So at least he knows who his favorite player is. I think more so when he was tripped up with was who are you most like, which is very different than who your favorite player is. Alliance partner.
What I desire in an alliance partner, especially in the context of Survivor, is somebody that I can potentially be able to manipulate.
Wait, Steers, why did he say especially in the context of Survivor? Isn't that the only context for the question?
Yeah, especially with the answer, someone I want to manipulate. I mean, I hope that's only Survivor.
Yeah, exactly. Like, how does this apply to, quote, Natalie Bolton? How does this resonate for you in the bedroom?
Jesus. I don't know that we were going there, but you did, so you made that decision. We all have to live with it.
But also have that little bit of element of trust, because at the end of the day, I understand that everyone's come here for their own interests, so I can't be too trusting to anybody but just myself.
What is the ethical or moral line for you in the game of Survivor?
When it comes to Survivor, I'm very open to do whatever I need to do and feel like I need to do to win the game. So I'm not shy. I won't hold back. You'll definitely be entertained, and trust me, I'm not going to hold back when it comes to making moves that I feel like I need to move in order to put myself in a better position for the game.
Would you rather be voted out pre-merge or get 0 votes at the final tribal council?
In terms of exiting the game, I'd rather be voted out pre-merge because that lets me know that people think I'm a threat to their game. So they want to get rid of me early, as opposed to making it all the way to the end and have nobody respect the game that you played and not vote for you to win. Because if I make it to the end, I want people to respect the game that I played enough for them to vote me as a worthy champion of the whole thing.
Spears, can I ask our lovely loyal audience, if someone could make like a tracker of the 15 interviews we've done so far, and assumingly the 5 additional ones coming, like how many people said pre-merge and how many said final tribal council? Because I'm really intrigued to see what the split is.
Why would you give this work to Sarah Carity? Does she deserve this?
I didn't mention her by name.
You know she's doing it. Sarah, it's not necessary. Someone... Mike, why don't you do it? What are we just calling out interns?
We've already done all the interviews.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an interesting question. Like, we got a response from Constance on Twitter who said, the pre-merge boot versus... I also love that I'm like, it's such an interesting question. We created it. The pre-merge boot versus 0 vote finalist boot is such an interesting question. As a woman, I would say 0 vote finalist because pre-merge boot might mean I'm a liability to the tribe, but the men seem to think it's because they are a big threat. Maybe like a Tevin boot. So I do think it's really interesting that it definitely comes down to demographic. Like, for me...
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I'd say pre-merge just from like, don't make me play 39 days for $0 if I'm not going to win. But then again, I could go to the end maybe, get 0 votes, and maybe they just perceive me wrong. And maybe it's the patriarchy and it's not my fault. Whereas I think a lot of the men can be comfortable in, well, they just thought I was a really big threat. But if I got to the end as like an alpha male and got 0 votes, where did that go wrong? Like, that's on me. So I think there's a demographic component to it too. And you're also thinking like, what kind of 0 vote finalist? Like Steven, who played really well but sat next to like super likable JT, or a GOAT? Different.
Yeah. I mean, listen, true to my demographic, I would love to go to the end and get 0 votes. Because you know what? That means I get to dress up really nice and sit next to the other finalists and get so many close-ups when Jeff Probst reads the votes. And yeah, you know what? I might not win. In fact, my name might not show up at the parchment, but I will hold that winner's hand. I will be the first person to hug them. There's going to be footage throughout all of time. All these YouTube compilations are going to be me hugging the winner. I want to be part of that seminal moment. So yeah, give me the full 39-day experience.
Mike, firstly, love a glimpse into your priorities, but also it wouldn't be you hugging the winner. It would be you losing in those compilations, like a loser.
But then but what would I be doing? I'd be hugging the winner, right? Let's call back Colby. Colby's like hooting and hollering and yelling, even more excited than Tina. than when she wins. That's the energy that I would bring as a 0 vote finalist.
Colby got 3 votes. Really different to lose by 1 vote.
Yeah, well, listen, I would, but yeah, that's the thing as well. Like, it was so tense for him. It would not be tense for me. At a certain point, I would know that I am not remotely given a chance at winning. So I'm just going to make the biggest kerfuffle possible while I'm decked out in my 3-piece suit.
Your own comfort level with your failure is concerning to me. Like, I wish for that freedom. Such an insulting thing to say to you. I'm sure you would be successful in the game, but I admire that you can be confident enough in yourself to lose publicly and have that in YouTube compilations and see that as a victory for yourself.
Well, especially with so many months after the game, right? Where like I know that I've lost. I will have come to terms with it. I will have talked my therapist's ears off about it. So bat ears off. So then I'd be able to come, get dressed up to my heart's content. I'll wear a tie and tails.
Why is so much of this about you dressing up nicely?
Because that's the thing you do at the reunion. Everyone does a little bit of like an off-island cleanup, right? I want to be dressed up like Elton John, sitting there next to the other 2 finalists, so that nobody says, oh, so-and-so won. They said, why was Mike Bloom, who humiliatingly lost in a 3rd place, bout, why is he dressed like a bird while he's sitting there waiting for the votes to be read, none of which contain his name?
Mike, I, as a huge threat who got voted out pre-merge, am getting more questions and airtime in that reunion than you are, and I'm also dressed like a bird, so everyone's talking about that instead.
No, I think more people listen. Again, you look at those winter compilations, it's all going to be so such and such a person won. All the YouTube comments are going to be like, does anyone else remember that guy from season 52 who dressed up like a bird at at the finale? Why did he do that? Hey, look in this video here at this timestamp.
Look, you're committed to the idea. I feel like I can't convince you away from it. So I admire that too, the stubbornness to hold on to this idea.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, I'm much like Tyson. I'm stubborn in that regard. But actually, the demo breakdown is one reason why I wanted Sarah or whomever to do that breakdown, is because I would love to see how many men versus how many women. What did they say? Age range, maybe like what sort of their personal archetype that they fill, to quote Mike, to see like, is there a trend with regards to how people answer this question? Just
so we can sum up before we get to the interview. I just said that I admire you for how you accept your own failures, for how you are stubborn, and just by the by, you're almost 40. I don't know why you podcast with me. Contractually obligated to, maybe. But I'm sorry. It's because
we're on camera right now and you're dressed up like a bird. But that really keeps my attention going.
I'm so sorry.
What will be the biggest component of your game? Physical, strategy, or social?
I feel like I'm a very all-rounded person. So my biggest thing going into the game is just being a jack of all trades. I'm good at the social game. I'm good at the physical competitive nature of the game. I'm good at adapting to different situations and different people. So I'm just going to have to play a well-rounded game that has no holes in terms of the social game, the physical game, and everything in between.
What's your favorite advantage?
Well, that's easy. Just play a well-rounded game that has no holes. Take that. Did it.
Big bang boom. Listen, how many unanimous winners have there been in Survivor over the years? Just add another one to it. Easy as pie.
So easy.
What's your favorite advantage in Survivor history?
As a person, I hate it when I'm not in control of my own fate. So in the game of Survivor, I feel like my favorite advantage is the most obvious of them all, immunity. When you have immunity, you can't be voted out. And that's the favorite thing.
What celebrity?
I love that. I wouldn't have thought of that. Made me think about it in a different way.
I really like this answer. Yeah, the immunity necklace is technically an advantage.
Yeah.
And I think the simplest one too, right? You can't, unless you're Eric Reichenbach, you can't misplay immunity. So I think that
he did.
You just sit there and you're gloriously safe, and you can certainly have things going on. This also, I think, very much scans with like his act versus react stance as well, right? Where like he feels like he's safe, and so he can have people come to him more. That's what's been talked about a lot. It's like once you're safe, people tend to approach you more because they know that you're someone who's guaranteed to stay no matter what and can certainly work with you moving forward. That's someone that can certainly put him in a position more of being reactive as opposed to having to be more active of, okay, you're not safe, your neck is on the line.
Good answer.
Celebrity or fictional character would you want to come out for a loved one's visit?
Somebody that I would love to come out for a loved one visit anywhere in the world, it'd probably be Seth Rogen. Seth Rogen is one of my favorite people in the world, one of my favorite celebrities, and his laugh is iconic. I mean, who doesn't want that around them? I want that. I'd love to see that guy more than anyone else.
What years? Seth Rogen on a loved one's visit would be pretty incredible.
He's going to be such a good addition to the brand steel. It's just great. It's just a great cast so far.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I would imagine that certain spoiler accounts come out and say that a certain loved one snuck someone maybe some illicit substances during a loved one's challenge. That's fingers are all pointed at Seth Rogen there.
Yeah, and that would make it a lot easier to take when someone starts eating their loved one. You'd be a little bit more chill with that.
Now, listen, if you can't get Seth Rogen, Tyson, would you settle for Jacob Derwin?
No, that's not.
A Seth Rogen looking type of Survivor contestant.
Okay, we couldn't bring out the actual celebrities you asked for in your pregame interviews. We were listening. We definitely heard you guys couldn't actually get Thanos on the line. We have lookalikes for you. We have people impersonating those people. We had to get 2 different Robert Downey Jr.'s and 2 different Bear Grylls. It's been difficult. We have absolutely exhausted all our resources with impersonation companies, but here you go.
Here are some imitation bagels. They're gluten-free.
Shaun, we just got some random dogs. We just found them on the street. Here are your dogs.
This is not Thanos. I'm so sorry. He's actually a fictional character, believe it or not.
Thanos, we got someone to be in a giant Thanos suit. It's comforting. He can carry you in his arms. This is what we can offer you guys. Yeah. We're doing the best that we can. It is COVID, and the borders are closed, and it's been difficult to actually get someone, as we said, are fictional. Tough one, all round.
Yeah. We want to make your dreams come true, but I would say that High in the Sky is to reading minds as what we brought to you is to super hearing. We just had to aim a bit below the top standard.
Yeah. I admire the effort. I really do.
What food would you sit out an immunity challenge for?
In the game of Survivor, I feel like I'm so focused on the end goal and winning the whole thing that I wouldn't want to be distracted by certain food that would make me sit out an immunity challenge. If there's a chance to gain immunity, I'm definitely going for it as opposed to picking food any day.
Cheers.
Yeah.
See, this makes the most sense for him. Like, I will totally shrug off that's not an answer thing, because he's the one who said his favorite advantage is immunity. So I would totally believe that he would always want to win it.
Fair enough, but I will say, look, a lot of these questions have landed. This one is one we will edit if we get to do this again. It will say, what food would you sit out an immunity challenge for? Yes, we know you are the most strong-willed person that ever lived. You'll never sit out of an immunity challenge. Great. Just tell us your favorite food. We want to know more about you. Are you a sweet tooth? Are you someone who likes cereal? We want to, have some fodder for the podcast that we can laugh at unfairly. Tell us your damn favorite food.
Yeah, maybe it's like, you win a reward challenge and you get your favorite food delivered to you at camp. What is it?
I think I'm going to go back verbatim. Listen to what I just said, where I also insult them in the question. I'm just going to write all that out.
The best type of question is when you just sneak in an insult there in the middle of it.
That's what I've been doing this whole podcast to you, so I guess I'm just in the mood. I don't know.
You're not that sneaky with it, just to let you know. I may be just mean 40, but I can hear it.
Okay. So you've been picking up on it too.
Just a smidge.
Okay. Good to know.
You could have any superpower. What would it be and why?
If I could have a superpower, it would have to be the ability to read minds. Because in a game like Survivor, I would definitely know what everyone is thinking. I'd know their moves ahead of time. And that would definitely put me in the best position to win the whole thing.
So it's about 24 hours before the game starts at the time you're recording this. What's going through your head as you're about to enter the game?
It's 24 hours before the game starts, and the only thing that's going through my mind is just excitement. I've been waiting to be a part of this production for a very long time. And now that it's finally happening and I feel like it's at my fingertips, I just can't wait to get started.
Is there anything else you want to mention about yourself before you begin the adventure of a lifetime?
The one thing I'd like to say is everyone says adversity introduces a man to himself. So if there's any truth to that statement, this game is bound to introduce me to greatness. When it comes to Tyson and Survivor, you will definitely be entertained. I am not afraid of anyone. I'm not intimidated by anyone. And I'm here to play a game that is authentically myself. So as far as entertainment goes, as far as seeing things that you might have never seen before, I'm a rule breaker. So I'm definitely here to be a part of it, not just participate. I'm here to do it all.
I mean, he's not untrue. Tyson and Survivor does make for entertaining, just based on the namesake alone.
Yes, a lot of iconic names coming through. Another, good contestant, good casting, definitely a heavy story that made my jaw drop. I'm sure the listeners would agree. He does have that kind of soft-spoken, he says that he knows what he hates, and it's not being in control. He definitely feels kind of centered and in control. And for the youngest person on the cast, as we've said, he has more life experience beyond his years. So, yeah, I guess that's all the men. And that is just a great cast of men. And the first 15 people in general, I'm really impressed.
And it's a really, again, disparate group of people, right? You have the cannibal cat lawyer himself, Mike Laws, who got brought into the show, via very different means, but he's trying to be, as he says, the charmy rogue with a secret and a wink. You have Paul, who seems to be like the super uber athletic person who, I didn't mention this before, but there was actually a really funny moment from his interview where they asked, what food would you sit out a loved one's challenge for? What food would you sit out an immunity challenge for? He didn't hear food and said bats would make me sit out an immunity challenge.
Me too. Oh my gosh. Wow, bats
so just
are
imagine
terrible.
They're like, all right, we're going to release a bunch of bats at you. Good luck.
I'm so on his wavelength. If it's like a fear factor challenge where you're doing an endurance challenge, but they're going to just release scary things at you, and they release a bunch of bats, I would also sit out. Good take.
I'm surprised they haven't done that. They do that a lot on Big Brother. Maybe it's just due to like the whole natural aspect that they try to bring into Survivor, but I'm surprised they haven't tried out that type of endurance challenge yet.
No, I like that they don't torture the contestants that much. That would just be torture porn.
So. Exactly, like starve them and then also put them in a room with bats and they'll just grow crazy. But yeah, Paul is someone who is incredibly physical, admits he's a little arrogant, but I think definitely is someone who is going to be a strength and possibly is a fire starter as well in more ways than one. You have Renier, someone who bills himself as the total package, as the young, scientific, physical dad who knows this show frontwards and backwards. You have outspoken Shaun, who is ready to be a villain to free your chickens in exchange for his dogs. Then you have Tyson, someone who sort of like speaks softly and carries a big stick, it seems, and someone who is ready to more so react than act when it comes to gameplay. And so again, 5 different guys, 5 very different strategies. And I'm really intrigued to see not only how they work with each other, but with the other 10 people and with the other 5 we're going to be talking about next time.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. I really feel that these are like 3 of the more fun podcasts I've done, where we just get these great characters to say often surprising things, and we get to react to that, which is, obviously a good thing. And I'm just really loving this cast. I'm keen to get going, obviously, with the season. But thanks for everyone for listening along now, about 7.5 hours into the series, and I hope everyone's been enjoying it half as much as I have.
Unless you jumped in the middle, in which case it's only been 2.5 hours and you didn't get any of our jokes.
Yeah.
But now, Shannon, how do you feel? You get control back, right? And you get to talk to me about the final 5 women next time we get together.
Yeah, the unknowingness is gone. I will never be so unprepared for a podcast again that I forget my call away for some reason. And now I've got to edit these questions, which I will do in the next few days, and then I'll know all the players, and I'm keen to do that because again, I keep seeing like things on social media, things keep seeping in, and I'm like, stop it, trying to remain kind of unspoiled on this. Stop it, Twitter, stop. So we'll see. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, so we've got, I think, our last group rounding it out is Nolene, who I believe goes by the nickname of Pinty. We have Kihan. We've got Santoni, we've got Thoriso, and we've got Warda. So I apologize if I butcher anyone's name. But yeah, 5 more contestants. And then, Shannon, we are done evaluating this cast.
And then we will have more preseason stuff, and then the season will start. Such exciting times.
I know. Yeah, I mean, we're less than a month away right now from actual new Survivor content, and actually having new Survivor contestants about it just makes that reality that more real. And I can't believe I'm getting more and more pumped. Somehow I keep pushing past 100% each time we get to talk about these things. But yeah, it keeps going off the charts here.
So exciting. Well, Mike, what else do you have going on in the podcast world as we make our way through May to the first Survivor season in a very long time?
Yeah, we're making our way downtown, walking fast, but not too fast, as we're putting these out every 5 days or so. Usual stuff on post-show recaps, Lost Down the Hatch, the Bloom Files, Wrapped Up Falcon and the Winter Soldier, some other stuff in the meantime. I do believe that Rob Cesarino and I are going to be doing some patron brand steal. So unlike the Loved Ones visits that we're cobbling together as its own brand steal, featuring 2 versions of Bear Grylls and maybe Jacob Derwin, we are having patrons come together playing as themselves, but of course, since it's brand steal, they have no control over what their game is. We have them answer questions as themselves, essentially. It's been very fun. I think this is number 4. The 4th season we're doing fans versus favorites. It is new patrons versus old school patrons. It's bound to be a very fun time. So listen, if you want one of many incentives to become a patron of Rob Has a Podcast, you can do that, as well as when this season finally comes around and you're on the hunt for links, you don't need to recruit Sean's dogs to sniff out some links for you. We get to house some lovely videos that you can watch in your spare time pretty soon after the episodes drop, but only if you are a patron of Rob Has a Podcast.
Sean's real dogs or the fake dogs we had to hire in the impersonation group we got for these people?
It's actually Mike dressed up as a dog.
Mike the cat lawyer, now a dog.
Yes, exactly.
We should have just ended the podcast in those first few minutes when you said my claws, and we peaked, and we could not pass that the rest of the time, because it's the best thing I've ever heard. Mike, I've insulted you a lot today, but that was true art.
Then you ended on a high note in that regard, so I'm happy about that.
Yeah, well, this has been super fun. Also, a little bit from me. Last time I talked about, if you didn't listen, go back. But last time I talked about Outplay puzzles, they sent me the flower puzzle from Australian Survivor. Since then, I did the puzzle. It was super fun. I'm now presenting it in my home on a mantle. It looks great. It really is like art, much like my claws. And yeah, you can use Shannon for a 10% discount on that. It's just at Outplay Puzzles on Twitter and Instagram. Which is a fun thing that's happening. But otherwise, Mike, I think we're done. We did my claws, peaked there, continued with the interviews, and now it is the end of that.
Yeah, so one more time, we're going to round the fences once more with our last 5, and then we're going to, as Shannon said, we're going to do a couple more preseason stuff, have more information about that at the end. But yeah, we'll come back together in a few days' time to talk about the final group of players. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to the players of Survivor South Africa, as Shannon mentioned before, for being so supportive during this entire time. Hope you all enjoyed these interviews as well. Hope you all enjoyed us getting to know you as much as we have enjoyed getting to know you, if that sentence makes sense at all.
Yeah, thank you to the players for the great answers. Thank you to the producers, as always, for allowing us to do this. Thank you, Mike, for being such a good sport over how mean I was to you today, and maybe too mean. I'm sorry. Sorry about it all. And thank you to Scott St. Pierre behind the scenes. Thank you to all of you guys for listening, and we will see you next time. Until then, keep evolving. Bye.
Australian Survivor is saying
Survivor New Zealand. Survivor.
21 South Africans, 12 ordinary Australians.
16 New Zealanders.
20 Nederlanders.
£1 million.
Miljoenen euro.
Miljoen shilling.
1 miljoen roebel. Beschrijven het op je recht.
The adventure of a lifetime.
Adventure of a lifetime.